everyone. Welcome back to the Gaming Block Podcast, your number one podcast for all the pertinent video game news spanning across all platforms, including Ouya, Game Gear, Virtual Boy, and more. I'm your host, Andrew Ron, and today I'm joined by one of the bad boys of video games, Ida Smoot. On today's show, I cut her off. On today's show, we're going to be talking about more of the Xbox FTC court battle, because that's exciting. Some Game of the Year Gollum news, not too good for them, and then also some interesting Xbox tidbits. But before all that, tradition dictates, I ask how my co-hosts have been. Ida, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you? How have you been?
That's
as you
strange.
Take a drink of water.
Roger and Jake never ask me how I've been. They just focus on themselves, those narcissistic fucks. Just kidding. I love them. I'm fine. I'm good. You know, we're moving. We have a sea of boxes in our apartment right now, so it just makes life so wonderful and so worth living. I'm assuming you're still here. I don't really know. You're frozen. You're not really saying anything.
I'm frozen?
Oh, okay. As long as you can hear me, I don't really fucking care.
Oh, man.
But yeah, life's fine right now. You know, it's going. Playing a lot of games, actually.
Really? What are you playing?
Well, a lot more than I had before. Still not too much. And that's not how this works, all right? So this is our first solo episodes. Solo is just you and me. The last time you were here was actually your first time. And that was our first ever 4-person podcast, kind of. There was one time that we had an interview with Team OA. I think that's how you say their name. They're making a Bionicle game. And that was a 5-person podcast. But that went really well because we all took turns and stuff like that. So anyways, we had the 4-person podcast, and I feel like you didn't really get your time to shine in that. Part of that was because of you and your decisions, but also part of that's because whenever the guys, we'll just call them the guys, whenever they want to say something, they don't fucking care if there's a train, a planet, anything. They're just going to say what they want to say and get it out. So I can see how that could be pretty intimidating. But now, today, the stage is
ours.
Well, I was going to say 30% yours, 70% mine.
Amazing.
Because I'm still going to, take the reins, and I'm still, this is mine, I'm the
It's
captain.
your baby. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm going to call it a baby, but
it's your infant.
It's my adopted Norwegian child. So,
perfect.
Yeah. No. Anyways, what have I been playing? I've never been asked that before. That's weird. I've actually been playing a couple things. And as I've said before, I'm telling this mainly to you because the audience, if you've been listening, you know. And if you haven't been listening, what are you doing? Go to episode 1, start episode 1, listen all the way through and get back to here. That way you know the lore of the gaming block. But I'm always playing quite a few things. But this week, mainly, I've been playing Pokemon Sword, which is really weird because, as everyone knows, I fucking hate Pokemon.
Yeah.
But here we are playing Pokemon Sword. And actually, I'll start with that. So I'm doing this thing with some of my friends. They were like, do you want to do like a gym challenge or some shit? I don't really know what it is. But what I do know is that we all spun a wheel and we got to type. And I'm fire. And that's the only
Amazing.
type of Pokemon
Perfect.
can be. And then
Yep.
after every gym, we're battling each other in kind of like this bracket formation.
Mm-hmm.
And then after all the gyms, we're going to like do this whole tournament thing. And then whoever wins is the best. I don't really know, but I was like, sure, gives me an excuse. I've never actually played Pokemon Sword either. So it's kind of cool because when I first played it, I didn't really jive with it. I was like, this is kind of dumb. It was a little broken when it came out too. So they patched and all that stuff since then. And I really like it. I like how cute it is. It looks really good on the OLED Switch. And
Really?
the gyms, so you got to remember, the last experience I really have with gym battles are like Emerald, Gym 3, Game Boy.
Oh, yeah.
So the gyms look completely different. And they have, the first one had this cute little gimmick where you're like herding these sheep through little obstacle courses and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is great and things like that. And then the gym battle actually kind of gave me a little goosebumps with like the way they have Dynamax in the game. And I don't know if you've ever played Pokemon Sword, but Dynamax is the gimmick of the game where the Pokemon basically just get big. But like the animations that they had, because like the Pokeball gets big and then they throw them and then it's like all this, and it takes place all in a stadium because this game is based off Great Britain. So all the gyms are on pitches, on soccer fields, and they all have like fans and they're all cheering and like singing to a song and stuff like that. So it's a really cool energy and really cool vibe. So I'm enjoying all that stuff. But yeah, we'll see how much I keep enjoying it, because at the end of the day, it is Pokemon. It's like
right, new age Pokemon.
New age Pokemon too. Yeah, I mean, at least old age Pokemon. I was young when it came out, but like,
It was magical when we were young, and it's still great now.
Well, it was magical when we were young because I didn't play any other games. I played Pokemon, and then I think the second I touched Final Fantasy, Pokemon just went away from me forever. Yeah. And then you get into other things like, you get into like, I got into like Star Ocean and the Tales series and, Dragon Quest, all these other JRPGs and Persona, which we'll get to over here in a second. But it's like all these other JRPGs where it's like, it's just like you have Pokemon on one side and then Persona 4 on the other side. How can you pick Pokemon,
Exactly.
It's just like it's so limited compared to almost every other JRPG. But there's also something to that limitedness where it's kind of like it's a little charming every once in a while. It's nice just like I'm just gonna beat this gym and then like everyone's my friend and throw out my stupid rabbit fire thing and it's easy. You just hit tackle every time when you win. It's like it's all cool. So other than that, the other thing that I mainly been playing is Final Fantasy 16. Speaking of, and no spoilers. I'm not gonna say any spoilers here in case you're worried about that. Not you specifically. I know you're not playing.
Hey, I might still pick it up, so I appreciate it.
I recommend it. I can say like surface level. I'm 10 hours in, which I wish I was 100 hours in already. This is the game where I'm like, I mean, I don't want to call it my game of the year yet because I haven't beaten it, but it's one of those games where it's like every single thing that it's hitting, it's doing it at a 10. Like story is a 10. The characters are a 10. The music is a fucking 100.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Like the music in this game is fantastic. And I was talking to Roger a little bit earlier, I think in the group chat with you. But I was talking to him just very surface level. He's a little farther ahead of me because I compare trophies sometimes. So I can be like, oh, he's got these 3 and I know they're hidden, which means they're story 1. So he's a little farther ahead. So it's like, okay, I can tell him about this stuff and be vague enough about it where it's not spoiling it for you guys because I know Jake's going to play it too. But he'll understand what I'm saying. And I was telling him like the part that I'm at right now, there's this very, very light spoilers, I guess, but I don't think it's really not a spoiler. It's right in the beginning of the game I start telling about it. But there's these 2 different races, basically. I mean, they're all human, but there's these ones that can use magic, and then there's people that can't. And in this world, the people who use magic are slaves. Oh. And the game does not hold back with that. Like there's some moments I was playing today actually where you get into this town. I think it's in the Empire. I don't know. There's so many people have been comparing this to Game of Thrones because of this complexity of nations and stuff. And I can agree with that.
Oh Lord.
But it's nice because they also have this, it's like active lore thing where it's always, in case you forget, you can just hold down the touchpad and it'll tell you this is who this is, this is who that is and stuff like that. So anyways, I was in this moment where I was like in the middle of the Empire or whatever, fucking, I don't know. And there's some side quests going on where it just shows like the fucking brutality of how they treat, I think they call it the bearers or something. Like they mark them with this thing on their face. And you are one of them too in the game. But just showing like this one guy was tricking bears to go save his son. And really they were just getting encountered by wolves. And like the wolves would kill them. And like the son was in on it. And the son is mad when you kill the wolf. And then things like that. Or like you help this little girl and she's like, oh, Chloe's missing. I love Chloe. Like, I don't know. I like pet her hair and play with her and all that stuff. And then you're like, oh, Chloe's a dog or whatever. Nope. Chloe was a person and Chloe died. Oh, and the girl's mad. She's like, that's like my 5th Chloe. I'm upset and I have to get new. It's like, that really like, these are just objects to them. And it's just like super hard hitting and super like,
right.
And it does that with every theme too, because there's also a theme of like personal discovery and, revenge and guilt and things like that. And every single thing that it does, it just so far 10 hours in, it's just nailing at a 10. And it's something that's like, I've played a lot of good games this year, but nothing has hit quality wise like this game so far. But who knows? Maybe the ending fucking sucks and it's a terrible game. Probably not though.
Right. 110 hours in, great game. 115, trash.
Trash. I mean, there's some games there are probably some games that I've played that were really good until the end, and then the ending was so bad.
It ruined it.
It ruined the whole game for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's happened. I can't think of them right now, but especially story games. Like, this is a story-driven game. I couldn't see them really fucking up the ending. I mean, I can kind of guess what the ending is because every Final Fantasy kind of ends the same way. You end up fighting some huge god or something and all this stuff. But I don't think they'll fuck up the ending. I'm sure it'll be fine. But if you are curious, you and the audience, if you are curious to hear more about this, whenever I beat it and Roger beats it for sure, we'll do a spoiler cast. And by that time, if anyone else has played it and beaten it, maybe we'll have more people on there too. So stay tuned for that. Patreon.com/SlightlyEMP or YouTube.com/ThatOneAndrew. Podcast services around the globe. What have you been playing though? What have you been up to?
Still Persona 4. I can't put it down. I put over 20 hours into it over the weekend. It's incredible. I'm almost at the end. I'm into the winter, and I'm not ready for the spring. I'm not emotionally prepared. Roger has tried to warn me. He's like, you're probably going to cry.
Probably.
And I'm prepared.
See, that's a game where the ending is so good, you hit new game right away.
Yeah. And that's what I'm expecting.
You're like, oh, it's over. And you're like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's just beginning. Yeah. And I told you, because you didn't know this, but it does have New Game Plus. So there is reason to go back. All your stats carry over. And it makes getting all 21 of the social links, because I think it is actually impossible to get all of them on your first run.
I would imagine so.
Just because there's some that are locked behind, like you're not courageous enough or you're not dexterous enough or whatever. But on the second one, when you have all those stats filled out, and especially with that third term too that they added, because in the original Persona 4, they didn't have that winter term. That was all addition in, well, actually, I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I know they added stuff though. I think they added the third term. I'm adding myself. I haven't actually beaten Persona 4 on PS2, but why would I? I have Golden. I've beaten Golden 50 times. I don't need to beat the original.
Right.
I'll beat the original one day, actually. But no, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I'm glad that every single person, it's like a spider web. You know, I indoctrinated Jake, and in turn, we indoctrinated Roger, and then now we've gotten to you. It's perfect. My plan is working. It's been 10 years, but soon everyone will play this game and it'll sell more than Call of Duty. That is my plan.
Absolutely.
And I want you to all know that I was here first, and I have the fucking Vitas to prove it, which you guys don't. So
yeah,
that's that. But do you think when you do beat it, are you going to go to another one, or do you think you're just going to stick with this one?
Another Persona game?
Yeah.
I think once I'm satisfied enough with my playthrough of Persona 4, I'm going to go straight to 3.
Okay. Do you know which version of 3 you're going to play? Because there's like 5.
Oh, right. Portable, probably.
Portable?
Well, what do you think, Persona God? What do you think? What's the best version of Persona 3?
That's my father's thing. No. Do you have a PlayStation 3?
Yes.
Okay. So what I recommend is buying Persona 3 Fez on the PlayStation 3 digital store. I think it's like $20. And I recommend playing that version first because it plays the most like Persona 4 Golden. Okay. Now, if you like the Fez version, don't play the answer. Don't play the answer. Just play Persona 3 Fez. And if you really want to play the answer, give it a try. It's this edition thing where it's like an extra 40 hours, but it's more or less just a dungeon crawler the whole time. And there are some new combat mechanics in there and things like that. I can't really get too deep into it because of spoilers for the ending of 3. But you can test it out. But what I recommend is like play Persona 3 Fez and maybe skip out on your second playthrough of 4 first because you don't want to burn yourself out on these games. Or just fucking go with it, because that's what I did. I mean, I did it over like a couple of years, but like I have gone through other Persona games. Right. But play through 3 Fez, and then if you like that, then go to Portable and play the female side. Because the female side changes it up just enough where there's social links are a little different. You actually get a different Velvet Room attendant, and the music changes too in certain areas. Like they have like female tracks and stuff. not like actually like Barbie girl shit or whatever. Like it's just like a female side. Um,
Right.
and then I recommend playing that version because Persona 3 Portable is it is what's the word I'm looking for? It's simple enough. Like they really simplified it. The way you move around is it's a flat screen. Well, I guess all screens are flat. It's a picture. It's a motionless picture,
It's
and
a
you move
3D screen, and you grab and move things around.
you just move a cursor around. You don't actually walk around and stuff like that. And it's more or less a visual novel until you get into the dungeons, and then you can move around.
Okay.
But everywhere else you can't, and it's a little jarring and it's a little hard to play for a lot of people. So I recommend playing 3 Fez first because even in the base game they did add some more social links and stuff. And then if you like that, either a second playthrough of that so you can do all the social links and stuff, because it's the same thing with 4. You're gonna need 2 playthroughs if you want 100% it. Or just jump to Portable, which is what I would do, and play that female version. That way, same game but different perspective.
Right. So my question is, not knowing that they had different genders for each game, more like Harvest Moon style, how many Persona games are like that if that's not the only one?
Just 3.
Just 3?
They only did that with 3.
Why? Do you know?
Nope. And
you mean you don't know the directors personally to know all these inside details?
No, I don't. I'm sure one of the fucking 100 books I have of Persona somewhere they say why they did it. I'm sure it was just a way to like appeal to the female audience or something like that. Because this came out in 2010 on the PSP first. So I'm sure it had something to do with that. Like they're trying to. Atlas was a lot more experimental back then, and I'd argue they still are kind of now. Like we have a tactics game coming out this year, which is you don't see those often. But back in like the early and late aughts or 2000s, whatever you want to call them, Atlas was more of like, let's just throw out everything at the wall and see what sticks. That's why you got Persona 3 in 2006, Fez in 2007, 4 in 2008, a remake of 2 in 2009 with a remake of 1 somewhere in there too. And then Persona 3 Portable in 2010. And then Golden came out in 2012 because that was actually going to be a PSP game. But then the Vita was announced, so they decided to make Golden on the Vita. But you can see like they're coming out every year. And then after that, they did a rhythm game. They did a fighting game. They did a dungeon crawling game. You know, the list goes on and on. Spin-off. So and they don't do that much anymore. They play it more safe and close to the chest now. Their remakes of that obviously really slowed down. But we are getting Persona 3 remake next year. And I think at first I did tell Roger, maybe not you, but I told Roger for sure. When that remake was announced, I said, don't play 3. Just wait for the remake. But
you told me that.
But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no. Personally, I like the style of the PS2 games a lot. Because like the one you're playing Golden, the art style and the way people interact and things like that, I like it a lot. And there's a certain charm to that generation of games. So I'm like, you know what? If you can, I think playing 3 Fez on PS2 or on PS3 is the best way to do it.
You're like, okay, you want to play Persona games, we'll play these 3 in this order of the exact same game.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're all different. Right. Same game, but they're all slightly different. But like that's the way to experience it. And then if you're really into the series, go and play 2, which you can also get on the PS3. Which that's a whole different fucking game. No social links. No, they're pixel games actually, but they're they're really good pixel art. You might like it. I mean, I think 2 personally is the best Persona game, and that's in terms of story and characters.
Yeah.
But the characters, even then, it's like the main characters because they don't have social links and stuff. Because inherently, like every character in 4, 5, 3 are better because you have so much more time to develop with them and things like that. But the characters in 2 are, I mean, one of the final bosses in that game is Hitler, which doesn't make sense until you hear what the story is, where it's like the whole point of the story is that rumors are becoming true in that game. And there's this guy called the Joker who's like, he has a Joker mask and stuff, who like is killing people who start spreading these rumors and things like that. And it's just a really good, it's a duology actually, because there's two Persona 2 games, because of course there fucking is, to make the series even more complicated.
Right.
But it's a game that's like, you got to get your head in the mind space. It's a PlayStation 1 game, but it's really, really good if you give it a chance. A lot of people don't, though. They're like, there's no social links in this game. There's not a calendar system. It's just the same. Actually, I think there might be a calendar system, but it's not. It's nothing like the new Persona games, as we call them.
Yeah.
So
how do you rate 5 in all of them? What's your favorite Persona game? You said 2.
Well. I think 2 is the best one. My favorite is Gold.
Okay.
Persona 4 Golden's my favorite and the best one to me. But I think 2 has the best story.
It's the best one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On a technical level, 2 is like the best one. But if I had to rate them personally, I would do 4. I'm just gonna lump them. I'm not gonna do the different versions because that'd be a fucking 20 list. I would say 4, 2, 3, 5, 1.
Oh,
those would be my ratings. I don't really.
So why 5 so low?
I don't like 5. I just never.
I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people don't.
Something about it just doesn't jive with me. I don't know if it's the music. The music's good, but there's something about constant jazz that's just like.
I'm so excited though.
I mean, a lot of people love the soundtrack, so I'm not saying I hate the soundtrack either. I'm just saying like there's something. It's not like Signs of Love or Heartbreak, and Persona 4, where it's just like it's good background music that I could listen to for hours.
Okay,
and it's fine,
With the exception of when you're in the high school. It's almost like that same track is on like a loop with the extreme vocals. Yeah. I've gotten to the point where I have to turn it down if I know I'm going to be in the high school a lot.
That's funny.
Because it's just like, chill.
No, I jam. I jam out to all of it.
But the Velvet Room theme is my favorite. Like, there's so much good music in it.
My big thing, honestly, with 5 is how long it is. Like Persona 4 has a long, like 100 hours.
Oh, well, Persona 4 is not far behind that, right?
Persona 4 is about 60 hours.
Don't say that. I'm at 54.
Yeah, no, you're almost done with the game. You said you're in the winter. When you're in the winter, you're
I'm on like the 4th of November.
Oh, okay. So you're not there. And it also depends on your play style too. I think with Jake, it was like 80 hours to beat Persona 4 Golden. Like if you really take your time and like just enjoying it, it can be like an 80-hour game. But if you're just like playing it at a normal pace, like say your second playthrough, about 60 hours to beat that game. Persona 5, if you're I tried to rush through it and I beat it at like 96 hours.
Really?
Yeah. I think Jake, it was like 120 hours.
Really?
Like, it's a really fucking long game. Really long.
Long in a good way or long in a, okay, I'm ready to be done with this game?
For me, there's a reason I haven't beaten it a second time. I was like, this is too much. Well, the fact you've
beaten it once is incredible. Because the long list of games you haven't beat.
I'm the Persona guy. I have to beat 5. That's true. I haven't beaten Royale, though, because it's just like that game... They actually streamlined a lot of things, so that game's not too much longer, even though they added the 3rd semester to that game. I think it's like 5 hours longer, but still, it's just like fucking 100 hours for one game. That's why like Final Fantasy 16, I think it's 40 hours to beat the story. 60 if you want to do all the side stuff, and I'm like, fucking perfect. Great. Give me more games like that. Give me 20-hour games.
Oh, no, like Stray. Have you played Stray?
I don't like Stray.
Really? Yeah. Hot take. Why not?
It's just not my type of game. I don't like any Annapurna type games, honestly. All those like slow moving. It's supposed to be like super like, I don't know. Like it's just very slow and it's very like atmospheric, but in a way of like, I play Journey. I beat Journey.
Yeah.
I don't need a million Journey games,
But they're so pretty and the music is incredible. It's the cinematic journey before the story. But the story is so lovable.
But Persona 5 is so pretty and the music is great. But that also has like fun gameplay. Because typically in those games, the gameplay isn't fun. You're just walking.
Right. I agree.
And you're not really doing anything. And I'm like, my monkey brain needs to be stimulated in more ways than just walking around.
Right. I get it. But because of that reason, we recently replayed Stray. And it's cinematically gorgeous, which is what kind of redeemed my faith in them coming out with the Blade Runner movie, Blade Runner 2033.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the human animations have me a little rocky, but cinematically, the environment I know that they have on lock. So, at very least, it might not be enjoyable, but it'll be gorgeous.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I wanna go back to Stray actually.
You should.
But one day, I don't know. I have to be in the mood for those type of games too. Like,
It's only a 15-hour game, though. That's where I was going with that. It's a short game.
yeah, and I love games that are like 10, 15 hours, especially for someone who plays so many. It's like, that's great. But I also love JRPGs, which traditionally are like longer.
Really long.
But
Right.
I said but like 4 times in a row. However, even
Contradict.
with JRPGs, a lot of them are like, Final Fantasy VII is not 100-hour game, or like Tales of Berseria is not 100 hours. Like a lot of them are not that long, and yeah, I don't know. I need to go back to Persona 5. I'm waiting. I'm letting it stew. It's kind of like with Pokemon. When I played Pokemon Swords first time, hated it. Wanted nothing of it. Didn't play it for 4 years. Now
Really?
I played it for like 6 hours yesterday. So it's just I ebb and flow into like what I'm feeling and how I'm like feeling to play and things like that.
For sure.
Yeah. So all right. Well, unless you have anything else to add. With that in mind.
Oh, I do have a question.
Yes.
Going back to Persona.
Yes.
Why do they make so many versions of the same game? And they're all different?
Because Atlas is owned by Sega now, and they've actually changed hands quite a few times over their 20, 30, 40-year life. I don't know. They used to make games. The original Megami Tensei games came out on the NES, so they're a storied developer out of Japan. They've been around for a while, and they've had their hand in quite a few things, publishing and developing things like too. But they've never been big. There's a reason that Persona is their biggest game, and if I recall, Persona 5 sold 5 million units. So it's a respectable number, but it's not like, I mean, it did set the world on fire, and I'd say that's about what you'd have to do, about 5 million units for you to be like, oh wow, this is big. Like Final Fantasy, its highest selling title is like 11 million units or something like that, 10 million units. So these games don't sell mega blockbuster, but when it hits like that 5 million mark, it's like, oh, that's big. Persona 4 Golden sold 300,000 copies.
Really?
500,000 copies. Yeah, on the Vita. And Persona 4.
Well, it's the Vita.
Well, even Persona 4 that was on the PS2 sold less. I could actually bring this up
Really?
if I needed to. But this was a franchise that didn't even break 1 million. Until actually, no, I remember it was Persona 4 Golden. And what they did was they combined the sales of Persona 4 on the PS2 and Persona 4 Golden. And then I think like after 10 years of the game being out, it broke 1 million units sold. And it was the first game in the franchise to break 1 million. And that's after one again, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4. So 11 games. And the reason that they kept re-releasing them is that, you make Persona 3, right? And that game sells 200,000 copies or whatever, 500,000. I don't know how much it sold. But it sold enough for them to make another one. If you make an enhanced version of that and sell it again, there's an extra 200,000 copies for something that took way less dev time.
Right.
So
right.
I think it's an old and antiquated way of doing things. I think in today's age, when they announced Persona 5 Royale, I really rolled my eyes. I was like, you can do DLC now. There's no reason that you should be selling this virtually the same game. And I get it. There's a third semester. There's new bosses. I understand that.
Sounds like a DLC to me.
But at its core, it's DLC that they could sell for $30 or $20. Instead, they're making you buy a $60 game again.
Really?
Yeah. So, and it's like, if you're the type of person that's like, I'm just going to wait till the enhanced version, it's great. Or also, I think the thing too with these games specifically is that like, you're almost to the end of Golden. you want to play it again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if you played Persona 4 and then heard like, hey, a new version's coming out with more shit and stuff like that,
Oh
be
yeah,
all
you'd be
over
on
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it kind of works for this series too, where it's like, okay, yeah, so we'll buy your $40 upgrade, $60 upgrade or whatever.
Yeah, I guess.
But that is why they had so many spin-offs and so many re-releases and things like that. I'll look up a sales chart. Actually, I might do that right now. I'm going to look up
Do it.
Persona series sales because I'm very curious. I'm pretty sure, because I might be way off base, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I'm starting to think I'm way off base.
You might be. It's okay.
This is a lot. This says the series in total has sold 15.5 million units.
That's insane.
I feel like I'm
it is such a small group
base
of people I've heard talk about it. So I'm sure they're reoccurring fans, but not really branching out as much as they say would now that Persona 5 is so marketed, I guess.
Yeah. So I already know this is not right. Oh, this is in Japan. That's not a good. It is a good graphic, but okay. So like December 1st, 2022, Persona 5 Royale reaches 3.3 million units sold. This is a great podcasting thing because you're just sitting there like, what the fuck are they talking about? What are they doing? And actually, these PC ports too have been doing great because Persona 4 Golden on PC sold almost 1 million units, which is like way more than the initial series did at the beginning. So I don't know. I'll look more into this, and maybe our next episode we'll bring that up if I remember. But we're gonna move on.
Okay. Now we actually get to start the.
I'm 99% sure that the Persona 5 was the first one to break 1 million without like combining all the versions and stuff. Most of them sold like hundreds of thousands, but yeah. So, and that's why I'm excited for 6 because I'm like, now they got fucking money now.
Is that on the books?
6?
Yeah,
it's somewhere. They'll make it. That's a whole nother conversation. Game dev time just fucking increasing because Persona 4 took 2 years to make. 3 came out in 6. Persona 4 came out in 8. Persona 5 came out in 2017. 9 years later. But they did make Catherine in between, but still, that's like 9 years for 2 games. And then Persona 6, it's been 6 years already. So
how do you compare Catherine to the Persona world?
Totally different game, but it's such a fucking fantastic game. You should play it. It's such a good game.
I love it. It's phenomenal.
The characters and the writing, it's all there. It's all there.
It's so lovable too, and
the darkness in it too, because these games are fucking dark. I mean, you've seen that firsthand now. These games get dark.
Yeah.
Especially 4 is tamed, honestly, compared to like 3 and even 5. But yeah, these games, and Catherine gets fucking.
Yeah, it does.
Demonically dark. Oh, you played it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, it's a great game. Great game.
Yeah.
So, okay, 33 minutes later. With that in mind, it's once again time for everyone's favorite segment, the gaming riddle. Jake's not here. There you go. There's your theme song. Don't worry about that either. We've had intros go an hour before. All right. Just means the rest of the show is probably going to go fast.
Yeah, we just have the good chemistry of not getting steamrolled by the 2 others.
Well, we just talk about Persona and then we can just fucking go off. Okay. The riddle this week. Susan, I know you're listening. My sweet wife. Love my
Who
life.
you love very much.
Yes. Let's see if you can get this one. I doubt she can. Only because I know she hasn't played this game before. And I'm going to be surprised if you get this game either because remember, audience, my co-host, they get 5 questions. They can be guesses on what the game is, or they can be questions that narrow down what the game is, so you could ask what platform it is on. I guess this is only your second time, so I can reiterate the rules. So you get 5 questions. The 5th one has to be you guessing the game, but your questions can only be yes or no questions, and you can ask basically anything. No Googling. Don't Google this, even though I don't think anything would pop up. But yeah,
straight from the noggin.
And I will change that every single time, depending on how many people are here or how hard I think the riddle is. I don't think this one's too hard, but it could also be very hard because when you start thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute, what is that? So the riddle goes as follows. Tend to your animals and grow your crops. Chop down trees and break up rocks. Gain a fortune and be on your way. Or maybe the farming life is good enough to stay. I'm proud of that riddle.
Did that
I'm
come straight
proud.
from your noggin?
Oh, of course.
Good stuff.
I make all these. So, all
Okay,
right.
so the
You
farming
get
sim professional here.
5 guesses. Yes.
It'll be 5 gaming guesses, basically.
You're not going to try to narrow it down or anything? Because you could try to narrow it down to platform, year released, series, anything. It's up to you.
Is it part of a series or is it a one-off game?
See, yes or no questions. So you can ask, is it part of a series?
Is it part of a series?
Yes.
And it has to be console specific.
Yes, it does.
Oh, man.
I don't go for L's. I want those points.
I know. My list went from this to this because there's so many games in this series, and I know there is.
Yep. That was the point.
I know it. Did it come out before 2010?
Everyone's like, your riddles are too easy. Everyone solved them so fast. Like, fine. Not anymore. No, it did not come out before 2010.
Okay.
Kind of. Not the one I'm talking about.
Is it a remake or a reboot?
Yes. Can't tell you it's one or the other, but yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. That's 3, by the way. You get 2 more.
Did it come out on the Switch? Was it launched on the Switch?
Ooh. What's your question? Did it come out or did it launch?
Well, did it come
answers.
out on the Switch or was it a game that was on a different console that is now available on the Switch? You see what I mean?
It's on Switch. I'll tell you that.
But it wasn't released on the Switch specifically.
I don't.
In the generation of the Switch.
No, it was. Yeah. In the generation. Yeah. I don't know when it came. I don't think it was ported. I think it came out day and date with. On the Switch with everything else.
Okay. Did it come out in the last 2 years?
No, and that's 5. So now I'm giving you a freebie because
no,
there's too many. But now you gotta. Count. Now I gotta
guess.
Guess the question. So no, it did not come out in the last 2 years. Yes, it came out after 2010. Yes, it is a remake / reboot. Yes, it launched day and date on Switch. I don't remember the 5th question. Rewind the tape to figure that out.
Yeah, scroll back, you'll know.
Yes, it's a farming game. I don't fucking know.
I should have started here. Is it a Harvest Moon game?
Now you got to guess the game now.
There's know.
No more questions. You got to guess a game title now. This is the one. You got to narrow it down.
How about, since the other guys couldn't make it, you give me their guesses? Because I didn't.
I kind of did.
I know. Just because it was released on the Switch, and it was a remake or a reboot, and I know this recently came out, but there are others like it.
Remember, not the last 2 years either. It did not come out in the last 2 years.
All right.
Because you were about to say something whack that just came out, and I was like, no, not that one.
No, not that one, but the one before that. I can't remember the name of the one that came out because it was bad.
I actually haven't played these games in quite a while, so play the originals, but not whatever the fuck they're doing now. Which I heard
they're basically the exact same.
Yeah,
so they haven't lost their charm. They just look
art style though. It's not for me.
It's very Pokemon-esque.
Yeah. All right. What's your guess?
All I can ask is if it's Harvest Moon. I can't think of what the name is that came out on the Switch because it wasn't very good. I didn't pick it up.
You can, if you want to, you can look up. You can look up like games that came out. Yeah, you just can't Google the riddle. But if you want to look up,
but the riddle came straight from your noggin, so
yeah. But still, I don't know, Chat GPT and stuff. You could probably put that in and tell you like what riddle was solved for this.
Yeah, let me go through.
But like when we were last week when we were doing Scooby Doo, everyone looked up Scooby Doo games that came out on Game Boy or whatever.
Really?
Yeah. Well, maybe not everyone, but Roger and Jake.
Not me.
That's for sure.
Everyone but me.
Yeah.
Is it Harvest Moon One World?
It is not Harvest Moon One World. The answer
it's Light of Hope?
that came out October 17th, 2019 on Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, and later to Steam in 2020. Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town.
That's the one I thought of.
The remake of my favorite Harvest Moon Game Boy game.
Oh, that hurts. I was like, man, that recently came out too, though, so I can't say Friends of Mineral Town. Oh, that hurts.
Not in the last 2 years. It's 2023. That came out 4 years ago now.
And of course, my brain forgot about it's a reboot or a remake because I was like, these two brand new Harvest Moon games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So with that, the points go as follows. Jake, 28. Roger, 18.5. I gave him half a point or something. He's probably crying about something.
Last week, yeah.
Andrew, 15. And Ida, big fat donut. That's okay.
0.
You're just starting. Roger didn't have a point for like 30 episodes.
I feel bad for not knowing that one, though. You'd think I would.
Right. You know, I try to make it
better
easy
than this.
Wow. Susan, I'm just going to assume that you got it right. So congratulations. A little clap for you. Don't clap in the car, though, because I know you're in the car listening to this. But good job on getting that too, Pickle. All right. Let's move on to our not so new segment, Meta on My Mind. It's been like 30 episodes now or something. Probably not that much, actually, but it's been enough. This is a segment where we take a look at recent Metacritic scores, which mean nothing, honestly, but they're interesting nonetheless. Over on PS5, The Legend of Heroes Trials into Reverie, which I'm very interested in. Love the Legend of Heroes games. I played them, of course, on the Vita. And then there's just been so many of them. It's one of these series where there's a lot of Japanese series that a lot of their games don't come out in the West, but then they'll like throw some in to test the waters. And then if they're popular, like the Legend of Heroes got, they'll start porting them all to the West, which is great. But that also means we've gotten 15 Legend of Hero games in the last 8 years. So it's like, it's a lot. But this has an 83. It's coming out on PS4 and PS5 and Switch. Sorry, Xbox. And it looks good. AEW Fight Forever, which is an arcade wrestling game, it has a 65 on PS5, so not too hot. And then, so far, my potential game of the year, Final Fantasy 16, has an 87, which not too shabby. Yeah. Not 90, but I'm also not surprised because... Yeah, I'm not surprised. I feel like games with this that are so specific, it's an action game and it's telling a story and it's very dramatic in that story. But at the same time, it's also very Final Fantasy. It's one of those things where, like, if you love that, great. You're going to fucking love it. If you're not really into that, it's not going to do a lot to convince you to really get into it, you know? So... And then also technically, there's some things that the performance mode doesn't hit 60 a lot. It does in combat, but outside of combat, it doesn't really. They just fixed the motion blur in camera because the camera would always center, and then the motion blur you couldn't turn off.
Right, I remember you guys talking about that.
Fucking terrible, and that just goes to show how great the game is. I played despite that, but the second that update came out, I think it was last night, turned it off, and oh my god, it's such a better experience. The game just went from like a 9 to I guess it's like a 9.5 to a 9.8 for me, It's like, give me some of those extra. Anywho, good game. Over on Xbox, AEW Fighting Forever has 2 whole points higher than its PlayStation counterpart at 67. Story of Seasons, hey, look at that. A Wonderful Life has a 76. These are just remakes. I'm surprised they're so low.
Yeah.
They all rate around the 70s and stuff. They're all pretty middling. That's probably because of Stardew Valley, though, Stardew Valley is just so good. It's like when you compare these games to those, it raises the bar. And then Crime Boss, Rocket City. We saw a trailer for this. The Game Awards, maybe, or something. This game looked very interesting, but it's 49. Not good. Oh. Not good. So don't play that game, probably. Over on Switch, The Legend of Heroes Trials into Reverie has a little lower, but still respectful 79. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, which is a new Capcom game, has an 85. And then Everybody Want to Switch, which you didn't hear about, has a 56. And we probably know why you didn't hear about it. Pretty low.
I'm kind of surprised, though, because 1-2 Switch was a huge hit.
Yeah, it was a launch game, though. And I think it's one of those things where, if I'm willing to guess, 1-2 Switch is probably a little overrated because everyone was like learning the gimmicks, new console. You know, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, this is really fun. Pretending you eat a sandwich with the
Like
controller.
Wii Sports.
Yeah, I mean, Wii Sports is actually fun though. Once you Switch just looked very gimmicky. You know,
I've always wanted to pick it up, but because we played it when it first came out, I just can't justify still spending $40 to buy it.
right? Yeah, me too. But I'm sure this one is rated a little too low. If I had to guess, they're both probably middling games, and this one's just slightly worse. Like a 56, you're getting into the realm of this game doesn't work, which maybe it
Yeah,
doesn't. I don't know. I haven't played it, but it's hard to believe that a Nintendo published game would just be broken.
right.
Although they didn't market it at all, it just came out. It came and went. It wasn't even
Yeah.
at the direct. You know, it
No,
just
it was.
no, it wasn't.
Really?
Yeah, everybody wants to Switch was not shown at the direct.
I wonder where I
And
saw it then.
it came out like 3 days after. So very interesting indeed.
Wow.
The Nintendo's just trying to go for the highest rated and the lowest rated game of the year. Still can't beat Gollum though. Over on PC, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective has a 90. Sludge Life 2 has a 76. And then Dave the Diver. I don't know what this game is, but I've heard a lot of people talking about this game. Apparently it's really, really good. It has an 89. But this seems to be like one of those new indie darling hits that everyone's talking about. Like, oh my gosh, have you played Dave the Diver? It's addicting. Love this.
Yeah, it looks like one of those sit down and burn a couple hours games.
Yeah. So, and that's it for Metacritic. So now we're going to move on to our ever so long top 100 rating. And we are on 2018 now, which, believe it or not, was 5 years ago. Very long ago. And when you hear these games too, you're going to say, yeah, these games have been out for a while. These games are kind of old.
Yeah.
Some bangers in 2018. Highlights include Red Dead Redemption 2, the God of War reboot, Monster Hunter World, Spider-Man came out in 2018,
Wow.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Celeste, Octopath Traveler, The Messenger, Detroit Become Human, Gris, people like that one a lot. Let's see, what else? Sea of Thieves, you can argue it's really good now.
Fallout 76, you can also argue that it's good now.
Fallout
kind
76, maybe if you're into that. So thinking about best games, Among Us came out.
One
of the best games. Thinking of best games list. Just looking at the games that came out in 2018, what are you thinking has a chance? Because remember, we're just picking games that we'd maybe make an argument for down the road, but not necessarily right now. I can start off with like Red Dead Redemption 2 probably is on the list somewhere.
Top, yeah. For me, yeah.
Yeah.
Hitman 2 came out that year. And I've always really enjoyed the Hitman games. I think they're really fun.
Sorry, I forgot how to spell redemption for a second. Yeah, Hitman. I think if I was going to put Hitman on the top 100 list, I would probably put Hitman 1. Okay. Just because that remake really set the tone for the rest of them, and they all built off that one. Hitman 2 was good though. Is Hitman 3 better? I don't know. Not sure. God of War probably is on the list. Probably on the list. Pretty good game. I didn't get around to it until like 2020. It was one of my COVID games, but God was a good one to play.
Same here.
Really enjoyed it. Did not like Ragnarok that much though. At least not yet.
Really?
Yeah, me and Roger both only got a few hours into it. And we were just like, we're not feeling this. This is not the vibe. And what's even worse is I've heard something that makes Final Fantasy 16 so great is how the scale of it and how epic it is. And I've heard a lot of conjecture online talking about how Final Fantasy 16 retroactively makes God of War Ragnarok worse. Because like the epic scale of Final Fantasy 16 is just so much higher. It raises the bar so much. It's kind of doing similar things where you're like these huge battles and stuff like that. So it's like Ragnarok doesn't seem as like amazing anymore, which might not be true, but that's just some things that I've heard. Yeah. I can't tell you. I haven't played both of them yet. So
on the top of my list for 2018, Shadow of the Colossus remake.
Do we put
top
the remake? You know what? We do.
I think
I think if we were to put, how do you spell Colossus? What the hell? Colossus.
I'll let you struggle.
You know what?
Not like that.
Like that. There we
There
go.
you go.
Yeah, in the terms of like remakes and stuff, I mean the game, I mean sometimes they're worse, like Silent Hill 2 and things like that. But Shadow of the Colossus by Blue Point, who makes fantastic remakes, it's the game but better.
Yeah.
It looks better, it runs better, it plays better, so it's like it's the better version. So you put that one on the list. So,
right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Smash Brothers Ultimate?
Hot take. I have never been a Smash Bros. Person.
All right, that's fair.
I'm not taking anything away from it. I'm sure it's a lot of people's top.
See, I'm not. I'm going to put it on the list because I can already hear Roger going, "Dude, come on." But I would argue like it's in this weird spot where, you know, there's already the debate of is it even a real fighting game, and I argue it's an arena brawler. You know, it kind of it's its own thing.
Right.
But then it's like in the list of greatest games of all time, was it one of the best fighting games of all time? I'd argue no. I think there's better Street Fighters, there's better Mortal Kombats. So then it's like, okay, is it one of the best party games of all time? I don't know. It's really fun.
I would say, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Once you switches in that conversation, that's for sure.
Yeah, but the Smash Bros. People, like, they will go out of their way to bring whatever console they can to every event to play Smash Bros.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. I think the only other one, well, actually, there's a few. You can make an argument for a lot of things. I love Detroit Become Human. I love it. I
saw so much about that. Never personally played it. I agree with you.
That's one of the games. Susan beat that game. She loved it so much.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to put it on the list.
Do it.
Is it a personal bias? Yes. But you know what? We can argue about this later.
It's undeniably a gorgeous game. So I'm not going to be the one to.
And the way that there's so many different outcomes and story branches and things like that, it really is like narrative-driven games in that style, like the Telltale style or whatever, it's top of its class. So
yeah.
The only one though that I would say is Celeste, which I unfortunately have not yet. I've yet to play, even though I own it.
Really?
It's just a game that I haven't played yet, but from what I've heard, it's just fantastic. And I think it was even nominated for Game of the Year, which doesn't really matter for our list. I'm not just picking out what was nominated or what won Game of the Year, but typically those are pretty correlated to what were the best games of that year. But yeah, so it's for 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War, 2018, of course, Shadow of the Colossus remake, Smash Brothers Ultimate, Detroit Become Human, and Celeste. I think that's a pretty solid list.
Oh, never mind. It came out at the end of 2017. Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight?
Yeah. I know Roger would fight for that too.
You know, I didn't put Spider-Man on the list, but I think that's because Spider-Man is a really, really fun game to play, but it doesn't do anything particularly amazing. Pun included.
I would agree with that. I never picked it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've beaten it like 4 times. I love that game. Yeah. But when I think about it, it's very by the books. It's got really good combat. I should say it has addicting combat, but it doesn't really reinvent the wheel. It's more like the Arkham Asylum games, the Batman ones.
Right.
And then its mission structure and map structure and things like that. Even its story, it's like it's a really great Spider-Man game, probably the best one. But in terms of like video games, it's like, I mean, it's really fun. But I don't know if it's one of the best ones. I don't know. We might come back to that one. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Unless you have anything else to add.
Nope.
I
got my word in.
Cool. Just making our way through the PS4 and Xbox One generation. 2017, that's going to be last year's Switch, and then we're to Wii U games.
Oh my God. Look at my list.
I can't wait till we get to like GameCube and shit like that. That's when it's going to get real fun.
That's when we're going to throw hands.
We're talking about like 2006 best games, 2003, 2002. Oh my God, it's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. All right. That's a wise way, though. Now, if you'd like to hear your question read on the show, please leave a comment on the YouTube video at youtube.com/AvalonAndrew or on a Patreon at patreon.com/SlightlyMP in the comments. This is our fun question of the week. I'm still coming up with these because no one leaves a comment. Leave a comment. Leave multiple comments. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section on Patreon or on YouTube, and I will read them on here. as long as they pertain to video games in some way and are not obnoxious or threatening or anything like that.
Threatening. What's
So,
the key card to your house?
what is your PIN number for everything?
Could you say
what's your
the
credit
ones
card?
on the front, the ones on the back? Don't
Yeah.
forget the 3.
Zip code. All right. No, don't ask that. I'm not going to tell you. Or do ask that. I don't care. I'm still not going to tell you. The fun question for this week is, have you ever found a random game in your house? And I ask this because me and Susan, and our dog, I'll throw the dog in there too, we're all packing. The dog's really not pulling her weight. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Hasn't packed a single fucking box, that lazy bastard. We're packing right now to move. And in the midst of packing, we found this bag. This is a little black bag. And let me tell you, this is like stuff where it just puts a smile on your face and you're like, I don't know how this happened, but this is great.
Mm-hmm.
Inside this bag, there was an original 2006, I think is being out, 2005. I don't remember. But the original DS, like the fat shelled one.
The fat one? Was it blue?
It was not blue. I think it was white or something. I don't remember. Or gray. I think it was gray. I'm pretty sure it was gray. But it was original DS. And then there was a black Game Boy SP in there. And I was like, that alone, I was like, this is awesome. And Susan was like, I don't know whose this is. It's not mine. And I was like, that makes it even cooler. So we just got 2 free consoles. And then in there was a Lilo and Stitch Game Boy game, which is just this basic 2D side scroller. That's what most games were on the Game Boy, especially if they were licensed property because they're pretty easy to make. And then there were 4 DS games, I believe. There was this fucking Scooby-Doo ass DS game. Mario 64 DS. Mm-hmm. New Super Mario Bros. And then Final Fantasy 3 Remake, which was fantastic.
What a weird combination.
And I don't think we had any of those games. So I figured it'd be fun to ask you, have you ever found... Maybe it's a game that you owned and lost or forgot, or maybe it's a game someone else had, or like, have you ever found something where it makes you go like, oh, this is awesome inside your house? Or maybe like a garage sale or something. I don't know, fucking anywhere.
Man, I really don't think so. Yeah, I don't have a cool story like that. I would love to find a DS, like an OG DS. It's the one I'm missing. So if you ever want to get rid of your spooky ghost DS...
I'm good. I cleaned right away. It was like all crusted and dirty and stuff. And right away I started cleaning it up and it looks fine. It's pretty scratched on the shell, but the screens are perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Good.
Nice.
And then as for the Game Boy SP, I want to get a blue one because it's the one I had as a kid. Mm-hmm. And right now we have 1 black one and 2 silver SPs. I'm like, okay, but give me a blue one.
Just get one reshelled if you care that much. Take one of your silver ones.
Or just buy another one. Can't have too many DSs or Game Boys or anything, honestly.
Yeah.
I have 5 Vitas, I think.
Yeah, the list is growing.
I have 5. Yeah. No, I'm not in the market for an SP right now, but I thought it was really cool. I might have told this story last episode too. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. If I did, fuck you. If I didn't, there you go. I'll tell it next week. Okay. So you haven't found anything. That's okay.
Nope.
There's been a few. Mainly just things that I've lost and then I'll find again. Because I don't really throw anything away.
Right.
Which I don't really have anything to throw away, if that makes sense. I don't get garbage. Like I don't go in antique shopping, like getting old lamps or old fucking whatever. I try to get like old games. I don't feel like that's something to throw away,
Right. Oh yeah, completely agree.
And actually it was funny because when we found this, Susan was like, yeah, I really wish I didn't get rid of my games and Game Boy when I was younger. It's like that's what that's what everyone says. And of course I did it too. I sold my collection when I was like 13. So thankfully it wasn't that big, but I sold all my GameCube games, all my Wii games, and all my Game Boy games. And to this day, I'm still trying to get all those back. I've gotten a lot of them back, but I sold a lot of them. I thank my mother for that one. She was like, if you want an Xbox, you have to sell the rest of these.
Oh.
I did it. Which I'm kind of happy for because the Xbox awoken me. That's where I played Mass Effect and BioShock and Halo and Call of Duty. And it's like, I was like, oh, these are video games. Okay.
Yeah.
Not saying Nintendo aren't, but it was a little different.
Different.
So. All right. We're moving to news for the week. And I told you this before the episode began. I don't think I said it while we were recording, but we're going to do it a little differently. Instead of me reading a whole block of text, which I do enjoy, um, we're just going to have little bullet points this time. And then I kind of want to like just talk about how you feel about it, or like, you know, maybe some other things, and we can build off on these conversations piece by piece. And a lot of these actually relate to each other. A lot of them are about the FTC versus Xbox hearings that happened last week. We still don't have a verdict last I checked. But if they do, was it an injunction or whatever? If the FTC sees probable cause that this could be a monopoly, they'll take him to court and the deal's probably dead.
Right.
If the FTC doesn't, which would be very strange, but not unlike the United States of America, because they do things like that sometimes, then, because I think all they need is like probable cause or something like that. If there's like any doubt, then they'll take him to court, which I don't see how you could say there's no doubt, but also I'm not a lawyer. Obviously, I'm not a fucking lawyer. So we'll wait and see how that goes, but there's a lot of things said during it that I want to talk about. But we're not going to talk about that first. First thing is, first bullet point is Deadlick Entertainment, who made Lord of the Rings Gollum, is no longer developing games, and they're moving exclusively to publishing now. I don't know how much you knew about this, but Gollum, Game of the Year, came out about a month ago, rated terribly, considered one of the worst games of this year, and Deadlick Entertainment was actually developing a second Lord of the Rings game. That apparently is canceled. And it's a little sad because this was their first foray into like a bigger budget 3D game. They were mainly point and click games before this. And the fallout from this seems to have completely destroyed the development team. So
that is pretty sad though.
Yeah. And they're a German studio, so you know, I always think it's good when more European studios get into the market. There's some big ones. CD Projekt Red, for example, is a Polish studio. And then like the guys who make Stalker are out of Ukraine and things like that. So, I mean, there are quite a few European studios. But it is kind of sad when you see someone miss the mark so hard and then it's like, well,
we're done. Yeah, that sucks.
That's the end of it. So, I guess no Lord of the Rings Gollum 2. Rip. Our next bullet point. So some sort of slideshow was being shown down in South America about like some holder conference or something. I don't really know. But we got some interesting Xbox figures over there. On one of the slides, it says that the Xbox Series X and S have sold a cumulative of 21 million or more units, which on one hand doesn't sound too bad. On the other hand, there's almost 40 million PS5s. So it looks like we're looking at another generation where Xbox is really struggling in the hardware, which you would think with Xbox Series S's being at that lower consumer-friendly price, because I think they're priced at $300, which is really appealing for that SSD, and then you also get ray tracing on it. But it doesn't seem to be enough to really bolster. And I'd be interested to see how many of those, like how many Xbox Series X's are there? 12, 13 million, you'd guess? Or are there more Series S's? I don't know. But then another slide said that adding the Xbox One, there's 79 total million units between the three, which still, that would mean there's about 58 million Xbox Ones sold, which I'll admit is better than I thought. The Xbox One really struggled at the beginning.
Yeah.
So if that figure is to be believed, and there are around mid 50s, higher 50s of Xbox One sold, it's still nowhere near the 110 PS4s, 110 million PS4s sold. But it is decent, I guess. You know, it's more than the GameCube. I'm interested to see, because we were talking about this about a month ago before you joined our podcast, but we were talking about how sales trends are downward for Xbox right now, which we're in the third year of the console life cycle, and this is about the time where the heavy hitters start getting put out and console sales start really ballooning and starting to get bigger. And we're seeing that with the PS5, and we're even seeing that with the Switch, which is on its 6th year of life. you can thank Zelda for that. But Xbox is just not happening, and that's because
No.
they still don't have the games.
Yeah.
I think E3 or Summer Game Fest, whatever it was very, very promising and made me excited. I turned my Xbox on for the first time forever. It lasted 3 days because there's still no games on it.
Right.
But I think the promise of Starfield and Fable and Avowed and all these other games, I think it's something to be like, yeah, I could see myself playing these.
Mm-hmm.
Will it be enough? I don't know.
I work with somebody who said today that they were going to get an Xbox just to play Starfield.
Starfield, yeah. No, I think Starfield is one of those games where it's like it is a system seller. How much of a system seller, I don't know. But, you know, when it comes to exclusives, like look at Final Fantasy 16. I'm only bringing it up because it just came out and it is an exclusive to PlayStation.
Really?
Yeah, it's a PS5 exclusive. It's not
Right.
anything else.
Yeah.
I think it's coming to PC later eventually. They all do.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it'll come to Xbox. I doubt it though. Final Fantasy 7 Remake never did.
Switch.
It's fucking, you want to see your Switch explode in your hands. Yeah,
No
running
shit,
Final
yeah.
Fantasy 16.
Mhm.
But like this game, there have been, I mean, I've heard of people like on Twitter buying PS5s to play this game. And it's one of those things of like, Xbox isn't going to sell 10 million Series X's because of Starfield. But
Mhm.
you get these big exclusives because maybe 3 million people, 4 million people go out and buy a Series X or an S to play Starfield. And
Mhm.
then you get the word of mouth like, oh, you should play Starfield and stuff. Maybe someone's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really want to buy a whole console for that. But then you get those people into the ecosystem. And for Xbox, you want them to get into Game Pass, which we'll talk about that. And then when they're there, these new games start coming out, and then who knows, maybe Fable comes out and you tell someone that you didn't have an Xbox before, but now you do have one, so you play Fable, and then you tell your friend, oh, Fable's really good. They buy an Xbox, and it's the trickling effect.
Yeah.
It's exactly what Sony did back in the PS3 era when they were getting trounced by Xbox, mainly because they didn't have any good games, and their console cost $600, but they kept putting out banger exclusives like Uncharted and Killzone and Resistance and Infamous, and you get enough of those great exclusives, Little Big Planet, things like that, where people are being like, oh, you should get a PS3 now and stuff, and it ends up that the PS3 sold more than 360 at the end, so
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah, because if you just someone who's just kind of into games and during that generation, and you ask them who won that generation, it's like Xbox by far. They trounced them. It's like actually they didn't.
PlayStation has always beat Xbox, right?
Every single generation. Yep.
Yeah.
The 360 was the closest one. I think they only won by like, I don't even say one because they didn't beat them, but they outsold Xbox by like 1 million or something. Like it was very, very. There's close parity between the two, which it is the worst selling home PlayStation console. I think it sold like 87 million units or something like that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because the PS1 sold over 100 million. The PS2 sold like 140 million.
Mm-hmm.
The PS4 sold like 110 million, 20 million, something like that. I don't know. So. Anyways, yeah, we'll see about these console sales. I don't know. After that FTC stuff, is Microsoft long to be in the console race? We'll see. We will see. Moving into that though, our next bullet point: PlayStation, in an email from Jim Ryan, head of Sony, to Phil Spencer, said that they are fine with Xbox buying Microsoft. They're fine with Xbox buying Activision Blizzard, but they want some guarantees. These guarantees included same-day releases for both consoles of games, parity of the games on platforms, all Activision games coming to PlayStation that are developed in the future, not just new or existing IP, and then equal opportunity for games on both consoles. So I thought this was interesting because PlayStation has been trying to stop this deal publicly, very publicly. But in this email, Jim Ryan is saying, we don't really care if you buy them, but we don't want you to do what you did with Bethesda. Because something that's been super interesting about all this is and actually it's caused the biggest problems for Xbox during this whole FTC argument is all the lying that they did with the Bethesda deal. When they bought Bethesda, they initially said, Phil Spencer initially went out and said, this does not mean Bethesda games are exclusive. I think he said something to the tune of existing IP will continue to exist on separate platforms or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And he was lying. And actually, we saw in the emails and during this court case, which I've said Phil Spencer is the greatest snake oil salesman in the world. I think he's done a terrible job with Xbox. I get that he like inherited a lot of shit, but he's been the head of Xbox for almost a decade now, almost 10 years. And we are just talking about how the Series X has sold 20 million units.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at like what are some of the great games that have come out on Xbox in the last 10 years? Like Sea of Thieves, maybe.
Right.
There's not many, you know. They haven't done the games. They've done a lot of buying. They'll go out and buy everyone under the sun. We'll get to that too. But you know, Phil Spencer, he's just, and that's what he does though. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to lie for his platform to succeed. But you don't have to lie so blatantly. You don't have to lie so constantly either. But it came out that in emails where Phil Spencer admitted, I think he was talking to someone, one of the head of Xboxes, but they said like, no, we have to lie right now. And we have to tell the audience that we're not going full exclusive because the backlash would be too big. It'd be too much. And we just have to we have to go through our exclusive deals and stuff like that. And then after that will be fully exclusive. And apparently this like blindsided Bethesda too. Pete Hines, who is their head marketer over there, he didn't really like that. Again, so many emails have been leaking and been shown during this court case, stuff like that. And specifically with this deal, actually, Bethesda seemed really backhanded because Xbox has been out there saying how Call of Duty will stay on PlayStation for 10 years. And Bethesda's over there like, what the fuck? We were making a Starfield PlayStation version and you had us cancel that. And you've told us, I mean the thing is like Elder Scrolls 6 is Xbox exclusive. It's not coming to PlayStation.
Really?
And it's like they're over there like, we didn't plan for that. You know? Like their plan, Bethesda's plan was like to always have this console what do you want to call them? Equal opportunity or whatever. And all that was shot in the foot. But now when it comes to Activision, it's like, oh, well, you guys can put your games everywhere. And it's very shady stuff. And it creates an environment, at least I think personally. I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'll ask you how you think about this too. But I think it creates an environment where if you're a game developer for Xbox and the way that they've been buying these studios and running these studios and treating them differently makes you not really want to work for them, you know?
Right. I completely agree.
Like if you're at Bethesda and you've been seeing this whole Activision thing, like why they're treating them so much better. They're letting them do whatever they want. But they didn't let you do that. I think it makes sense why Todd Howard, who, if you don't know who Todd Howard is, you know, yeah, of course you do, the creator of the new Fallout and the new Elder Scrolls, not the originals, but you know, when they came to Bethesda, he recently came out and said like Elder Scrolls 6 might be his last game. And at first people were like, oh, he's young, like, why do you do that? I guess game development or something. But then after all this, it makes sense. It's like he doesn't want to deal with this shit anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I didn't put it in the notes either or something, but I was reading something where it's like, you know, if this deal goes through with Activision, a lot of the time whenever a company buys a studio like this, especially like a big purchase like this, they put in their contracts, it's like, okay, a lot of this money, because, you know, a lot of the money goes to the higher ups and like project leaders and things like that. So they keep them on for like retention and stuff. Their payout is like over a 5-year span. That way that they stay there for 5 years. But they're saying how like a lot of these people are just gonna take the money and run. Like they're not going to stick around. Like why would they want to work under Xbox after seeing what Xbox has done with all of their studios? Right. Like the way they've ran 343 into the ground, the way that like the coalition has just been kind of stagnant. We talk about, or we have talked about on the podcast before, the guys that are making the Perfect Dark game. I can't even remember. Let me look it up really quick. Perfect Dark Xbox. The Initiative. That's a brand new studio. And I remember we were talking about this on the podcast how it's like Xbox has a quadruple A studio now. Not triple A, quadruple A, because that's how much money they're pouring in and putting into this. That was years ago. Right. That was like 3 or 4 years. We have not heard of Perfect Dark since. Right. And it's just like these studios aren't being ran.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what Phil Spencer's doing, but like this is his job as head of Xbox, is to get games out and to make them get them out good. And then things like Redfall come out, or Halo Infinite at launch comes out, and it's like these games aren't good. So I mean, I guess that was a lot, but how do you feel about like all of that? How do you feel about how do you feel about like Bethesda being treated differently, and then maybe having some bad blood over how the Activision deal's going?
I mean, I've never been an Xbox person. I mean, I played Fable on the 360, and that's kind of the extent that I ever had with Xbox. So I don't really have a dog in this race other than the fact that Todd Howard is leaving after, or says he's going to leave after Elder Scrolls 6. I mean, that's a passion project for him. You wouldn't have put all these years into a game if you didn't love it. So him leaving says so much about what could come.
Yeah. And I do think too, it's like, personally for me, when Microsoft bought ZeniMax, who owns Bethesda and id and Tango Works, and all everything Bethesda owned, because they didn't just buy Bethesda, they bought the whole shebang, the whole umbrella. They were blindsided by it, and people have to realize, and I think most people do realize this too, but I think you get really the hardcore fan bases on either side are the ones talking and shouting on Twitter, be like, no, look, Todd Howard loves this. Just look at like their reaction video to being bought and like them at E3 and stuff. It's like, dumbass, they have to do that. They can't go out there and being like, we fucking hate this. We want our games on all platforms. We didn't want to be bought by Xbox. You can't do that. You're going to get fired. You're going to ruin the brand. Like that is a no-win situation. But with all these emails now leaking out and being shown out, I think buying Activision might have been the worst thing Xbox could have done, because so much dirty laundry has been aired now. It just makes them look terrible. We're going to talk about how they're trying to buy every single studio under the sun later. And it's just like, it makes them look really bad. And it also makes them look like, their own developers don't like what they're doing.
Right.
And I get that. It's like, it is really shitty to be like, I can't remember what the exact quote was, but Pete Hines, the head of PR for Bethesda, it was a little after Bethesda was bought and it was finalized, that he was asked about future games coming out on the PlayStation. And because Phil Spencer was being so wishy-washy because he was trying to damage control. And I still think it's one of those things, like, it didn't stop the fire. It's just a slow burn now. Because even today, people are like, is Elder Scrolls 6 coming to PS5? Like, we don't know, because he said the whole existing franchises bullshit thing, where he was just talking out of his ass. Now that we know now, which the general public won't be that informed or like watch all this stuff or read all this stuff, but we know now, no, it's not. But he was doing what he does best, lying out there, or I guess like withholding the truth. But Pete Hines was asked about like PS5 and Starfield or something, and about PlayStation, and you could just hear it in his voice, but he's just like, we love our fans, and we're so sorry, and things like that. And it's like, yeah, there are millions of players that they want, because they know maybe this game sells 15 million units on PS5. If it comes out on PlayStation, 15 million people are not going to go out and buy an Xbox to play this game.
Right.
Like the player base is smaller because it's going exclusive. That's just a fact. Like, the next Fallout will sell and be played much less than Fallout 4 was, because it's going to be on fewer platforms. Right. And as a creator, I can't imagine what that's like, because most of the time when a studio gets bought, historically, unless you're Xbox, because Xbox just buys anyone. But like if it's a studio Nintendo buys or PlayStation buys, they're typically studios that make exclusives. So they're not taking their player base, they're not severing it, and they're not taking it away from the developers and things like that. So it was really interesting to see how it is affecting, like, or like it's perceived to be affecting some of the developers and things like that too. Because it's like, with Activision, you got to think like it's a big chunk of your player base you're just cutting off if you stop.
Absolutely.
And I don't think they'd do that either, because I think they realize that Activision would. I don't think it would be destroyed, but I think it would be a shell of what it is today if you cut off all those players.
Right.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
So my heart goes out to Pete Hines and Todd Howard and the rest of them that seemed to be pretty bummed out. I mean, they got a lot of money from it. Don't get me wrong, and maybe that's why they want to retire too. They were rich before, and now they're even more rich. But still, it's like you still, these guys make games for a reason, you know. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, it's not to get rich.
Right.
Most of the time, it's just like they want to make good games for everyone to play.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we're gonna move on. Another interesting thing, I wrote "oops" that came out of the court case is that some things didn't get redacted, and we now know how much some games cost over at Sony. So this is in a court document that apparently, like, some type of intern or something was supposed to write a Sharpie, like Sharpie this out.
Yeah.
They didn't. Or they didn't Sharpie it enough and you could still see through it, which is fantastic. But according to this document, which is 100% legit, God of War Ragnarok cost $200 million to produce. Horizon Forbidden West cost $212 million to produce. And The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million to produce. Now, these are insanely expensive prices. Games even 10 years ago didn't cost a fraction of how much this cost.
Oh, absolutely.
So I thought this was interesting. I know you don't know much about like game development and costs and things like that.
Yeah.
But we've been talking recently about like price increases, like games costing $70 now instead of $60,
right,
and longer dev times. You look at Naughty Dog, right? Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million to make. Naughty Dog, in between The Last of Us 1 and The Last of Us 2, I think that took 8 years to make, maybe 7 years to make. I think The Last of Us Part 1 came out in 2012, and then Part 2 came out in 2020. So it took 8 years to make that game. Mm-hmm. The Uncharted trilogy was done in 5 years. They made 3 Uncharted games in 5 years. I guess they made Uncharted 4 in between that too, in between Last of Us 1 and 2, to be fair. But still, like, you went from making 3 games in 5 years to 3 games in 10 years. So dev times are getting longer, and they're also getting much more expensive. If I had to just random shot in the dark, Uncharted 1 probably cost $30 million to make.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah, absolutely. And that, I would guess like $30 million. So these ballooning prices, I think, are a problem, and they're going to be a problem. But that was a very interesting thing to see released in the court case. And now here I am. I'm the one now. I'm being the Jake where I didn't silence my phone. Of course, it's Jake messaging me.
Oh my gosh!
All people, of course. I'm just going to kind of go through these real quick. Call of Duty brought in $800 million in revenue for PlayStation in 2021 alone, which is incredible. I mean, that right there, we just saw that revenue alone funds God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Last of Us Part 2, and another game.
Right.
So if Call of Duty was removed from PlayStation, that'd be a huge chunk of cash just gone.
Right.
Bobby Kotick, who is the head of Activision, who's in the process of being bought out right now, he took the stand and he said that he doesn't like subscription services. He argues that they lead to lost revenue and that Activision games would never release day and date on subscription services under his current ownership. So that's very interesting. He's throwing Game Pass under the bus, saying basically he doesn't like it.
Yeah. Well, it's not an unpopular opinion either.
It is not, and we'll get to that because I have a little story about that. Phil Spencer continues this streak of lying, which, again, he has to in some situations, but he also could just keep his mouth shut and say no comment. That's my thing. That's my thing about Phil Spencer, is that obviously he cannot say things. He can't say things like, yeah, we're making all the games exclusive now. Like, he could, but that's bad PR, right?
Right.
But he could easily come out and say, we bought Bethesda. We're going to see where this goes. But as of now, they're owned by Xbox, and they're going to make Xbox games. Mm-hmm. That's all you have to say. Instead of this bullshit, existing IP will continue to exist on other platforms, blah, 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 blah.
The legal jargon, the word jargon.
Yeah, you're just lying. Or just say no comment. Because this next one, in this FTC case, it was shown that Spencer attempted a bid at Sega in 2020, even though he outright denied the claim in that same year. And this is really, really interesting because if you look at the dates, I can't remember them specifically, but it was like September 12th, Phil Spencer was asked, and I'm being completely serious, this was the time between it. He was asked, are you trying to buy Sega? And he said no. And it was like September 13th, they put in a bid to buy Sega. It was the next day. So that's like one of those things where it's like, you just say no comment. Right. Or you say, we're always looking to expand our properties and we're always looking. You don't just lie. I mean, you can, but then the problem is when something like this happens and we see that you're just a fucking liar.
Exactly.
Everything from this point on, we're going to be like, you know, Phil Spencer, we heard that you're interested in buying Square Enix. Is that true? No. Okay, but you lied about Sega.
Right. So why should we believe you now?
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's just shooting himself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
But Xbox was really interested in buying Sega in 2020, which they bought. You said you're not a big Xbox gamer. They've bought so many studios in the last 10 years. List of studios Xbox has purchased. Let me just read you the list really quick. Because it's a lot.
I'm sure.
If I can find the list. Oh my goodness. I wish I just knew them off the top of my head, but I unfortunately can't remember that many. Okay. So I can just read you this. Every Microsoft-owned studio. 343, which they didn't buy. Alpha Dog Games. I don't even know that one. Arcane Studios, which was under ZeniMax. Bethesda Game Studios. Bethesda Softworks. Those are also ZeniMax. Compulsion Games. I think they didn't buy that one. No, they did. They're the ones that did We Happy Few. Okay, yeah. So they bought that one in 2018, I think, or 2019. They bought Double Fine, who made Psychonauts. They bought them in 2019. They got id under Bethesda. They bought In Exile in 2018, who make the Wasteland games, and they're making that new Clockwork Revolution game. Machine Games, that's another Bethesda studio. They do the Wolfenstein games and things like that. They bought Minecraft infamously in 2014, Mojang, which they own Minecraft. They bought Ninja Theory in 2018. They made have you ever heard of Senua's Saga?
I haven't.
Or Senua's Sacrifice, the Hellblade game? So that was like, ironically enough, it was a PlayStation exclusive that went multi-platform, and then Xbox bought them, and now they're making the sequel exclusive to Xbox. But they're kind of a smaller studio. They did some like this says right here that they worked on DMC, Devil May Cry in 2013, and then they made Hellblade. So that's interesting. They bought Obsidian, and you might remember Obsidian as the guys that made New Vegas, and they also made the Outer Worlds. I think it was the year that they bought them. They bought them in 2018, and they make the Pillars of Eternity games and things like that too. They bought Playground Games, which they were a Forza studio, so they were more of a internal. Talking about Rare was 20 years ago now. But I think that does like they bought Rare. A lot. Like I think that goes like to show their character of like this is how Xbox has been since they started, where the second that they started, I mean, infamously they tried to buy Nintendo.
Really?
Have you heard this story? Oh, it's so funny. And this is one of those reasons why I've never liked Xbox. I like Xbox as a console. And I like that the games that it's helped produce, like, you know, I like the Halo series. I like the Gears series. I like Forza. You know, all these other Xbox things that were either exclusive or came because of Xbox Live and things like that. Like they've done some great things. But at the same time, I think from day one, they're in court right now because of monopoly concerns. I think they've tried to be a monopoly. I think they've tried to buy everyone out since day one. And there's this infamous story where when Xbox was first being produced and made, and this is back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Microsoft went to Nintendo's headquarters. And this is a story I've heard, and I believe it. I think it's true. They went to their headquarters and they made a bid to buy them. And Nintendo just laughed. They laughed.
Duh.
And then they left. They had them fly all the way to Tokyo to make this bid so they could laugh in their faces, and then they left.
Amazing.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, this is how Xbox has always operated. They've just tried to buy their way to success. And thankfully, they've been third place the whole time, except for the Wii U.
Yeah.
But they've always failed, and it's because they've never focused on games. They focused on buy more, which hasn't worked so far, and they just keep.
You think they would learn?
Learn. Tango, which was under Bethesda, the initiative that we talked about before, they're making Perfect Dark. When I don't know. Undead Labs they bought in 2018, who make State of Decay. So those were Xbox games, so that one kind of makes sense. Looking through the rest, I think that's about it. So just quite a wide range. Or a wide range of studios that they've purchased. Some weird like Ninja Theory just doesn't make sense, you know. Like, why'd you buy Ninja Theory? They made
because they could.
Because they could, I guess, right? You bought Obsidian. I mean, they make good games, but why? It's so weird. It's not like they made like when PlayStation bought Naughty Dog, that made sense because Naughty Dog made PlayStation games.
Right.
That was it. When they bought Insomniac, what was it, like 6 years ago or something now? Like Insomniac did make that one Xbox exclusive. I can't remember. Sunset Paradise. I think this was called the Xbox One launch game, which was really good. But other than that, they've been almost exclusively PlayStation. The Ratchet and Clank games, Spider-Man, of course, that came out later, and others. And it's like, that makes sense. But Xbox, they just like, oh, Ninja Theory, you made this exclusive, or it was an exclusive PlayStation game. All right, we're gonna buy you now. And I want to show you this list. Studios Xbox wanted to buy list, because this list of studios that they are interested in is insane. And it's actually it's a 100+ list of studios that they looked into buying.
Oh my God.
And I'm not going to sit here and read
Please don't.
a whole list, because that's insanity. But I will tell you some of the bigger ones.
Rapid fire.
Well, I don't even know if this is all the bigger ones. These are some big ones, though. So companies, so we already talked about Sega, which Sega owns Atlas, so it would have been Persona too. They're looking at buying Sega. They were looking at buying Square Enix. They were looking at buying IO Interactive, who make the Hitman games.
Right.
They're looking at Bungie, who Sony actually recently bought, but Bungie makes Destiny Marathon.
Oh, okay.
They looked at acquiring Zynga, who makes Farmville and Words with Friends. Niantic, who makes Pokemon Go. Oh. They looked at buying Supergiant, who makes Hades and Bastion. I think those were the big ones. But as you can see, those are...
They're not selective. They just want everybody.
They're just random.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not selective at all. And it's really scary and nervousing, because it's like this. I think this court case and all this information is going to have a ripple effect throughout the industry.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because, you know, Sony's not dumb, and Nintendo also, because no one's talking about Nintendo, but like Niantic, that affects Nintendo. Like, you know, these things affect Nintendo too. And these companies aren't dumb, but they also don't know everything that happens behind closed doors. You know, if Xbox comes over and makes a bid with Sega, they don't necessarily know that they tried to buy them. They just know that, like, you know, they make a lot of exclusive deals and things like that. So this might be the first time that they saw this list and they're hearing about this list and things too. And like Square Enix is not an Xbox platform at all.
Right.
That is a really now PlayStation, but also in a big chunk too, Nintendo. That's a PlayStation and a Nintendo company. Yeah. And it has a legacy of being those companies. And, you know, they've always dabbled with Xbox stuff, but it never really like amounted to anything. I mean, I don't know. I'll kick it over to you, but do you think, like, if you're Nintendo or PlayStation, like, does this worry you? Are you like, they're going to buy all these companies? We have to go buy things so they don't? Like, is that what they do now?
I mean, I think, like you said, the ripple effect will start to hit after Xbox has seemingly aired all their dirty laundry of they're just trying to buy everybody without any regard of anything else other than to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And with the reaction of Nintendo in the very beginning, I'm not really worried because if it does get to that point, it will turn into something else. Xbox will run that into the ground, not do anything with it,
I
and
see.
then we'll create a new. You know what I mean?
Kind of like they did with Rare, where
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
bought Rare, you know, Banjo-Kazooie was big from Rare,
Mhm.
and they had just made that Star Fox game, which
Right.
has mixed feelings, but I think it is a good game on its own. And then they made the Conquer games, of course, and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But then when they went over to Xbox, they just became a husk of what they were, and they just
Right.
plummeted. And for the longest time, they're making like Connect games. You know, they've just been
Right.
completely changed and destroyed.
Mhm.
No, I see what you're saying. I think though, with like I think they learned from that actually, and their new strategy is to like with Bethesda. When they bought Bethesda, they're not running Bethesda. They said, "Okay,
Mhm.
you guys do your own thing. We own you now. You're gonna make games for just our console," which I
Right.
think is a pro, but also a con because then the company can release Redfall, which Redfall was very mediocre and not great, and that's a bad
Right.
look for your console
Right.
because it's an Xbox exclusive. So
Mhm.
it's a double-edged sword for sure. Um, but I also think I don't know like if I'm Sony, who's been having massive success with like these Final Fantasy games, and
Mhm.
like I mean, there's just so much that Square Enix makes and does. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I'm just like, do we buy them? Do we try to buy them? Do we try to? You know, your competitor is going for everything now. They're trying to buy
Mhm.
Sega. They're trying to buy Square Enix. Are they going to go for Capcom? Are they going to
Mhm.
go for Koei Tecmo?
Right.
Are they going to try to buy all these Japanese studios? Because that, I mean, there's no strategy in that list. But if
Right.
Xbox was going for a strategy, where they're lacking severely is Japan.
Right.
Like their Japanese, they suck. They're
Yeah.
straight up. They always have. They always. I mean, they might
Right.
always will, unless they do something about it, like buy every Japanese company. So if you're Nintendo, who has a great relationship with all these companies,
Mhm.
and like the Monster Hunter games are big on Nintendo,
Mhm.
and a lot of the Warriors games do really well, like Koei Tecmo and stuff like that. And of course, all those other Square Enix kind of smaller, lighter JRPGs and stuff come to Nintendo and things like that. But like, these are big partners that you're looking at. These are
Mhm.
hundreds, if not billions, of dollars of revenue throughout years and decades that you're like,
Mhm.
they're trying to take all that stuff away. Like,
Right.
do you go out and you start consolidating everything? Because that's what everyone's worried about with Microsoft right now is the consolidation. I think them consolidating is going to force everyone else to consolidate. That way, they don't
Right.
take
You beat
anything
the
away.
punch. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I mean,
I didn't say it either, but in that list also was Housemark, and Housemark, they're the guys that made Resogun, and they made I can't remember what that, it's like Red Matter or something like that, and then they just did Returnal, which all PlayStation exclusives. They've only made PlayStation games their whole
mhm.
lifespan, and they were just bought 3 years ago by PlayStation. Microsoft was looking to buy them. They've never made an Xbox game ever.
So, do you think it's just at this point going as high up as it's just out of spite because they have always been third place?
I think part of it is strategy because another email that came out was Matt Booty, who is a higher up at Xbox. He had an email that was talking about their goal was to outbuy Sony to destroy them. They're like,
Right.
we could outbuy them, outspend them, and we can destroy them. And then
Instead
when
of make good games that
yeah,
people love to buy.
we'll just buy everything,
Right.
and then it'll break them, which is hilarious. But and actually, a couple of weeks later, there's some old Sega documents that came out.
Mhm.
Just great timing. I'm sure someone leaked them on purpose, but it was from like the late '90s when Sega still
Mhm.
made consoles, and they're like, Sega's going to destroy PlayStation. Like we're gonna destroy them and get them. We're gonna blow them out of the market because Sony
Uh-huh.
at this point had been making consoles for like 3 years, and
Really?
Sega,
Oh, yeah.
was and Sega was like, 20 years in or whatever.
Right.
We all know how that went. Sega stopped with the Dreamcast in 2002, and then Sony, we're here today.
Right.
So comments like that, I think people are taking that a little too far. Of like, oh my god, it's like, no, Sony's fine.
Yeah, I'm not worried.
They have Naughty Dog. They have Insomniac. Like they have their studios. You can't buy Santa Monica and make God of War. Sorry, Sony owns that.
Right.
But no, that is their strategy, is just like buy everything. At least it was. And I think it still is, because I think the way everyone's looking at it now is their new strategy is Game Pass. Which leads us to our last point, and that is Jim Ryan said under oath that collectively publishers do not like Game Pass. And oh boy, did this cause a tizzy online. So much so that I actually personally got into a little beef with someone over this.
Really?
Yes, which isn't too unheard of on Twitter, but it is something that happens every once in a while. So he came out and he said, he said 4 out of the 5 big publishers, excluding EA, because EA has EA Play, which is their little Game Pass thing that comes with Game Pass. Xbox pays EA to put that on there to be included. So even then, they're doing it out of like their subscriptions on there too. They're not doing it out of we're giving you these games. Right. And I don't think they put their games on their day one either. But out of, I think the big 3 would be Ubisoft, Activision, EA, of course. Who are the other 2? I'm not sure. Embracer, maybe, because Embracer's really big. They own like THQ Nordic and things like that.
Oh, okay.
They're one of the bigger AA studios. And then maybe he's talking about like a Japanese studio like Square Enix or something. But he was saying that publishers don't like Game Pass, and this to me did not come as a surprise. Because if you look at the games, you don't have an Xbox, so I guess you don't have Game Pass either, right?
No.
If you look at the games that have come out on Game Pass day one, some of the highlights include Outriders, that big and famous game, and Exoprimal, which comes out in a week. Have you ever heard of Exoprimal?
Not once.
It's a new Capcom game that is debuting on Game Pass. And this is actually a perfect example of how big this game is. You play video games, you have a PlayStation, you have a Switch.
Yeah.
It's coming out on PlayStation 2. You've never heard of Exoprimal.
Right.
Liza P is debuting this year. Third-party game. On still. And that was the thing that I was arguing. I got into it with this one guy. I won't say his name.
Please don't.
But he's actually a local. He's out of Kansas City. And he runs a kind of bigger... He's an editor-in-chief at a bigger site. No, I'm not talking IGN or anything like that. It's smaller than that. But, it's a site where like, oh, you've probably heard of it. And he was arguing that, no, publishers love Game Pass. Just look at all these other ones. And he started listing like Annapurna and Devolver Digital, all these smaller publishers and things like that. And it was like, dude, no, they don't. It's obvious that Game Pass is good for smaller titles to get a chunk of money, because every game that goes to Game Pass, they get paid by Microsoft to put their game on there. Right. And every game that goes on there are games that they don't think are going to sell well. Outriders, without Game Pass, even then, I think I read a report, because I was getting into it with this guy, and I was like, why don't you do your job and actually do some research and like write an article about this? Actually get facts instead of like posting your 140 characters on Twitter, and actually like source some things and write an article about it.
Precisely.
So I went ahead and wrote an article about it. And because I was like, I could do it. I was like, because I know he's wrong.
Right. You've educated yourself on the facts.
And I wrote a 1,674 essay with citation.
Oh my God.
On why developers don't like Game Pass.
Say you're a teacher without saying you're a teacher.
Right. And I emailed it to this guy and I linked it to him on Twitter, and he never responded. He never responded.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't.
And I was being all polite too. And I said, here's my article. I did research. I would love for you to read it and refute any things that you don't like. And I also told him, because I wasn't being mean. I wasn't like saying you stupid bitch or whatever. Like, people get on Twitter. I wasn't saying any of that stuff. This was more or less a good conversation. It started with, I said that it was way off base and he got super defensive. And then I kind of brought him back down, being like, I said, I think you are. Here's my reasoning. Let me hear your
Right.
reasoning. I don't agree
Mhm.
with your reasoning. And his main reasoning was, I talk to developers. I know a lot of developers. And I was like, okay, can you show me proof? But he
Yeah.
couldn't. And then I
Right.
showed him proof on my side, and he didn't respond. And he never wrote an article, of course, because that's what this day of gaming journalists do. They're not real journalists; they're
Right.
newsbreakers. They
Right.
type out big headlines. FTC battle. Xbox really did good today. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. No research. No nothing.
Yeah.
But there was this big thing about people not liking Jim Ryan saying this, and I mean, I think your perspective is an interesting one, since of someone who doesn't really know the minutia of the revenue and like money and things like that. You just know what it is and kind of
Mhm.
how Game Pass works, right? I mean, you have a basic understanding of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just had to look at it from like a macro view, like what's your feelings on Game Pass? Like, how do you feel about it? Do you subscribe to it? You have a PC, so
Oh, no. I
would you
know
would you ever?
probably not, no.
Hmm. Is there a reason?
I guess I have no reason to.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the ignorance is bliss side of it, of like, I've gone this far without ever longing for anything more, so why would I?
Yeah. And you don't
Because
think
they're
like
obviously not selling it to me with their,
with
you
what they
know,
got?
right.
If they put every Activision game on there and every Sega game, would you get it then?
Probably not.
Yeah. And I think that's where Xbox is messing up, is that people like buying games and like buying games that they play.
Hmm.
They don't, this whole subscription model thing is just, it's stupid. I think personally, I
Yeah.
think it's so dumb. And I think the way that they look at it, because people will be like, well, look at Netflix. That's a subscription. It's got 100 and something million
And you used to be able to,
subscribers and stuff.
did you used to be able to rent games from Netflix that they would send to your house? Or was that
Um,
Blockbuster?
that was Blockbuster and
Okay.
GameFly, which still exists. GameFly
Right.
still lets you do that.
Does it really?
They do. They do.
Wow.
There's a market. Not a big one, but there's a market. No, I think the Netflix argument doesn't hold water, because when Netflix came out, it was replacing something.
Mhm.
Netflix was to replace your cable box that you're spending $80 a month on all that content. And Americans and the world is used to, you turn the TV on and I mean, before you had like 3 channels or whatever, but by
Mhm.
the 2000s, if you had TiVo, or DirecTV, you had like 800 channels or whatever,
Right.
right? Like a lot of content. It's just something that we were used to.
Mhm.
And then when Netflix came out, it's like, hey, you don't need all that anymore. Get this now for $15. That makes sense. That's a natural, okay, let's go to this instead. It's same thing,
Right.
cheaper price.
Mhm.
With games, you know, Gamefly, you're surprised that it's still around.
Yeah.
It's not that popular. Blockbuster is gone. It wasn't that popular. The whole subscription, because Blockbuster, you had to rent your games piecemeal, but near the end of it, they did have like the Blockbuster Plus or something, where actually no, what it was fucking called Game Pass. They had a Blockbuster Game Pass where you paid a monthly subscription and you could rent as many games as you wanted to.
Oh, you're so right.
They had that for like the last 2 years of existence,
Uh-huh.
and it didn't fucking work, because
Right.
people who play video games do not care if you have 100, 200, 500, 1000 games available to you, because
Mhm.
most people play 5 games a year,
Right.
and it's cheaper to just buy your games piecemeal instead of paying for these subscriptions. And I think the people who love Game Pass and the value it shows, I think it's great for them. If you're
Mhm.
someone who wants to play 100 games on Xbox, Game Pass is perfect.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of people don't. They don't care. And I think
Mhm.
this strategy that Xbox is going under is just dumb. And to bringing it back to publishers not liking it, it makes perfect sense. Like,
Yeah.
if Assassin's Creed launched on Game Pass, even if there's only 10 million people on Game Pass who want to play Assassin's Creed, and they
Mhm.
did that instead of buying it, that's 10 million copies they just missed out on selling.
Right.
Is a massive, massive depletion of revenue.
Right.
It only really works for those smaller games, or those games like Exoprimal, which you've never heard of.
Mhm.
It's by Capcom. We know Capcom. but this is a new IP that's not really popular. Put it on Game Pass because they're going to get, I don't know, Xbox will pay them $80 million to put it on Game Pass. They just made up like almost all their development cost.
Right.
So it makes sense for that. But if it's Assassin's Creed, that could make $500 million. Unless Xbox pays you $500 million to put it on Game Pass.
Right.
Why would you do that?
Right.
So that was a lot. Very all over the place. I just thought it was all interesting, and I thought all of it was very damning to not Xbox's case per se in buying Activision, because I think that's still like it could go either way. I think they could or couldn't buy Activision based off this, based off if the FTC tries to indict them or not. But as someone who's looking, who's like really into this stuff, looking into it, I think this just kind of didn't destroy the Xbox brand, but did damage to it, you know?
Yeah.
It definitely made me feel gross and be like, I don't want to support them at all.
Right. And that's kind of where I was coming from as someone who's from the outside, not an Xbox player. After seeing their behavior, it's like, why would I support that company? I'm not going to run out and get an Xbox now.
Like, is me paying for Game Pass funding you? I mean, I know it's not. It's Microsoft. They have so much fucking money, you know?
Right. It would never make a difference if you boycotted Xbox, obviously. But
if you subscribe to Game Pass, and that's another reason for Phil Spencer to say, no, look, it's working.
Yeah.
We should keep investing into this. So now let's go buy Square Enix. I own all the platforms, you know. It's not like a thing of if Square Enix gets bought by Xbox, I can't ever play their games again. That's not the point. The point is every single time Xbox buys a studio, I should say every single time, but 9 times out of 10, they're taking games away.
Yeah.
Starfield was being made for PlayStation. Elder Scrolls 6 was being made for PlayStation. Microsoft took those versions away from those players. They canceled those versions. Not Bethesda. Microsoft did. When they bought Rare back in the day, they took those games from Nintendo. It's not like Rare was just magically done making Nintendo games and it just so happened to coincide with Microsoft buying them. No, they took them away. When they're looking to buy Bungie, which I'm sure this is the reason why Bungie didn't sell to them, was like they were going to make them exclusive. And Bungie was probably, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
Or when they're looking at buying Housemarque, who makes only PlayStation games, that was to take games away from PlayStation, put them onto their platform. Right. So just really, really shady and gross. And, you know, if Microsoft goes the way of the Dreamcast and if they stop making consoles and only went third party, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like imagine if they're like Game Pass on everything. It's on PlayStation. It's on Switch.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fantastic.
I think they'd save a lot of money doing that.
I think they would too. And I really think, I mean, Phil Spencer's job's on the line because this is all his thing. Game Pass is all his thing. And I think there are timelines and there are quotas. And I think if this Activision deal doesn't go through, this is a big, we're not happy because they spent a lot of money already trying with lawyers and legal time and just so much money already on this thing.
Oh, yeah.
So much time too and so much reputation.
For sure.
I do think that it could go that way, which might not be the worst thing. And then, I don't know, fucking someone else make a console. Because I think
that would be something, huh?
I think 2 is not enough, but I think with 3 of them in the mix.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Sony needs a competitor. And not Nintendo, because Nintendo's too different, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like when I grew up in a small town, it's like everybody was either Ford, Chevy, or Toyota. And nobody had anything else cross-contaminated. You had your brand of vehicle. And that's how it is right now. And it's, I mean, I think it's how it's always been. People that have all 3 consoles or even 2, Xbox and something else, are not average. So it's like the Halo stands of the group always have the Xbox. Yeah. But like Roger and Jake aren't going to lay down their controllers for Xbox and swear off everything else.
No. Yeah, that is interesting. I know. Yeah, I wonder how many people own an Xbox and other consoles, but how many people own just an Xbox?
I'd love to see that number.
Yeah, because I know something came out about the Switches. I think it might have been just for PlayStation, but there's something that said like half of PS4 owners also own a Switch.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting, but also like the perfect encapsulation with Switches. It's such a great second console, you know?
Yeah.
Like you have your main console, then you have your Switch. I
Mhm.
wonder how many Xbox owners have a Switch, but also a PlayStation 2. Like how many of them have that second console? Like, you would think much more than half. You would think a
Right.
lot of people have more than just Xbox because
Right.
you're
What
just
would
missing
you
out on.
play?
Yeah, which isn't 100% fair because all the third parties do come out to it, you know, like your Assassin's Creeds, Far Cry's, Battlefields, Call of Duties. Like there are a lot of games, but it's like exclusive wise, yeah, what are you playing? Like,
Right.
not much. I can tell you. Forza, Halo,
Right. Comparatively to Sony and Nintendo that
which
have
have
stunning exclusives, dozens a year.
which is why that whole like again that whole comment of like we're gonna buy Sony and we're gonna destroy them this way. It's like we're gonna buy them out of business or whatever. Not buy Sony, but like we're gonna buy all these companies and get Sony out of business by doing this. Like, dude, they have Naughty Dog.
Right.
You're not gonna. They have The Last of Us, dude. They have God of War. They have Spider-Man. What are you talking about?
Right.
If they went out and bought Square Enix and Sega today, let's just say hypothetically they got that and Activision. They bought all three of them and they made all of them exclusive to PlayStation. It doesn't matter because The Last of Us Part 3 is coming out. Uncharted 5, wherever it is, I know it's real somewhere, but that will come out. Like I mean, you laugh at that, but like there is a new Uncharted game being made down in Santa Monica right now. Like it's almost 100% confirmed. I don't know why it hasn't been shown, but it is real. And you know, Spider-Man 2 is happening. That Wolverine game being made by Insomniac. Like it's just such a stupid, nearsighted, very American way of thinking. Like let's just buy out our competitors. It's like in the entertainment business, that's not how it works.
Right.
If your competitor keeps making the best shit,
step up your shit.
Why is Nintendo still around after the Wii U? Did Nintendo, and that's kind of like, that's something else where, and you can really like see this, I'm sure, and relate to this too, is that like, we all know what happened in the Wii U generation. Nintendo fucking floundered. I think the Wii U sold like 13 million units, like fucking abysmal. Which Microsoft can kind of relate with like the Xbox One and stuff. Like it didn't do that bad, but it did really bad. Especially compared to like 360 and the original Xbox.
Right.
But the difference is when that happened, Xbox's answer was, let's go buy all these studios that make good games and that'll bring people to the platform, which hasn't worked. We just saw the sales for the Series X and S. Nintendo, they didn't go out and buy a whole bunch of studios.
Yeah.
They made Breath of the Wild.
Right. They were like, we fucked up. Let's really fix it.
They made Mario Odyssey.
Right.
Like, that's what you do. Your console is starting to fail. You go and make great games for people to come to the console.
Right, exactly.
And of course, you know, the Switch had a hand in that too, because it was like this whole new idea and thing. But if it was just that, and if it launched with 1-2 Switch and that was it, I mean, that thing isn't fucking selling anything. But, you know, I remember hearing those stories how, like, at one point, more copies of Breath of the Wild were sold than Switches. like it was a mega phenomenal game. So
and I played it on the Wii U.
Yeah, which is fine. Like the people who had Wii U, like if you want to play it there, that's fine. But it's also, I think it was that thing of like, you have that correlation of Nintendo made this. Here's Nintendo's new console. You're just thinking positive correlation with the two, you know?
Right.
So,
and I can't think of a single time Xbox has ever successfully done a comeback.
Not for a while. Yeah, comeback. I think that's a good idea. Because during the 360 era, they're just consistently good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then they haven't had that comeback moment. They've had some good games come out, but nothing that's been like, hey, we're going to be consistently good now. We're going to release Breath of the Wild and then Mario Odyssey and Splatoon 3 and then Tears of the Kingdom. You're right. There's like consistently good. Same with Sony where they're consistently, they did The Last of Us and then Uncharted 4, then Spider-Man, then God of War, then Horizon, you know, just like these bangers after bangers.
They're like on a trajectory, whereas Xbox is like, I'll just buy shit because that works maybe.
Hey, Activision, they have Call of Duty. People play that game. People like that, right?
Right, exactly. Instead of
Because
actually putting effort in.
all you hear is good news about Activision and Blizzard, right? No. It's just bad news after bad. I mean, people buy it. Diablo 4 set records for how fast it sold, but
Really?
yeah, I think it was Diablo records, not like overall game industry records. But still sold a shitload in this first like week and stuff like that. And I mean, it's a great source of revenue, but again, that's just like that's a company where you buy them. It's like, A, why?
Yeah.
And then B, there's a lot of baggage there. It sounds like you didn't hear about it, but like I remember while this podcast was going, we were talking about it's like sexual allegations happening, worker abuse.
Shit starts to just come out.
So many bad, toxic work environment, like a terrible, terrible place. Bobby Kotick, who I was talking about earlier, the head of Activision, like a lot of bad things about him coming out. He's done a lot of anti-consumer moves too and things like that. It's just like so many bad things, but they just see dollar signs. And that's what they're looking at.
Do you think after all of this is said and done, no matter what happens, do you think they'll continue doing this behavior of like trying to go out and buy everything?
I think they already said they're not done. I'm pretty sure, like 99.99% sure they said this is not our last one. We are not done. And if this doesn't go through, they're not done. Because honestly, if the FTC, well, I mean, if the FTC says, yes, you can do this and this goes through, the sky's the limit. Activision is the biggest you can go. Yeah. Maybe Ubisoft is bigger in terms of like personnel and like how much IP they have. But Activision with Call of Duty is and Blizzard, like Overwatch is massive. Diablo is massive. Like, even World of Warcraft is fallen off a little bit, but it's still like played by millions of people. You can't get much bigger than that, which means everything smaller than that is open for business. And then if this doesn't go through, there's it's like a $70 billion deal or something. There's $70 billion that you're about to spend on one studio. You can't buy Activision, but you could almost buy Activision, which means you can buy everyone else.
Right.
So now, why not go for Square Enix again? Why not go for Capcom? Why not go for IO? Why not go for all these other companies? And Embracer Group, who is a big European conglomerate, we've talked about them, how they've just been gobbling up studios like crazy over the last few years. And they own THQ Nordic, and they have like, I don't even know what it is, like 50 studios under the belt, like a massive amount. For context, Sony has like 15. Xbox has like 30. Wow. Embracer has a shitload. And they're actually in a huge financial trouble right now. They had a like $1 billion investment that pulled out in the last second. And is actually, I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but there's this whole thing about the head of Embracer coming out. He sounded like he was about to cry and things like that. It's like, you could tell it's like, this is where it's like they way overextended. They had like over 100 games in development or something. It's like you have all this cost and all this upkeep. You have these thousands and thousands of employees, and you're making games like fucking Destroy All Humans remastered. It's a good game. Not selling. It's not even selling 1 million units. You know, like they're not making the money anywhere.
Right.
So with them breaking down, they even own like Saints Row and shit like that, you know. They own Dead Island. The guys that made them.
Okay.
They own like a lot of people, a lot. So, you know, if this deal doesn't go through, maybe Xbox looks at them like, hey, you're about to liquidate, you're about to sell off a lot of things. We'll go buy a lot of things.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see, but no, I don't think Xbox is done. Not even close. They weren't done with Bethesda, you know. They bought Bethesda.
Right.
And then a couple years later, they said now Activision.
Right.
So
I just see all of this like so in the public eye, all the allegations that are now coming out, every bit of dirty laundry that they have. It's like, find some fucking humility and stop while you're still kind of ahead.
Yeah, and you know, I will say this too. Oh my gosh, who is the guy that's the head of Microsoft, because he took the stand too, and he had some interesting things to say. Satya Nadella. I hope I'm saying his name right. The FTC quote. He said something interesting about Game Pass and Microsoft and Xbox when he was on there. I mean, I can't even find it, so that sucks. But paraphrasing, very, very much so paraphrasing, he basically was saying that in an ideal world, there are no exclusives, and he doesn't like exclusives, which is funny because Xbox under him, so 2014 is about when Phil Spencer came in too. That's all they've been doing is buying consoles or buying studios and then making games exclusive, and they blame Sony for it, which is funny too because this whole thing about like Sony's paying for like Final Fantasy 16 to be exclusive, and they're saying they're the bad guys. And it's just hilarious because like, you know, Mass Effect and BioShock, those were third-party games that Xbox paid to be exclusive. Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, the second one that came out, that was an Xbox One exclusive for a year before it came to PlayStation. People forget a lot of these things. I don't. I remember all of them.
Got the knowledge.
So when Xbox is up there being like, PlayStation is terrible because they pay to make Final Fantasy VII Remake exclusive. We would never do that. It's like, who the fuck are you lying to?
And then you write essays.
And then you do some journalism.
Yeah.
And you say, which none of them, again, none of the big journalist sites were saying any of this. None of them wrote essays being like, here's Microsoft lying. Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, of course that doesn't happen. But he said something to the tune of like, it just sounded like he doesn't like Game Pass either, you know? So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Like when your boss is even like, I'm not sure about this. Like,
right.
Interesting. So, okay. That's it for the news. Very long-winded, but that's okay. It was a lot.
That section only took 45 minutes.
I mean, could have gone. If that was Jake or Roger on the other side, you never know.
Oh yeah, we'd be about a paragraph in.
Must be talking about Gollum. Won't even beat Xbox yet, so. Okay. Moving to the new big releases of the week, I only have one that I'm going to talk about, and that is The Legend of Heroes Trials into Reverie, coming on PC, Switch, and PlayStation. What destinies await these three faithful figures? Using the Trails to Walk system to switch between Rin Schwarzer, Lloyd Bannings, and the masked figure C, in quotes, and determine the fates of key characters and locations within Zemuria. Dive into refined tactical combat with new features such as United Front and discover new allies and challenges within the halls of the true Reverie Corridor. Something I would have made Roger read if he was here. We always appreciate it. Japanese one, so it's the only game I bothered putting on there this week. It's the only big one, really. I mean, if you're interested in any of the other ones from our Metacritic things, like there was that AEW game, Final Fantasy 16 we talked about last week, but still, if you have a PS5, get that. I think you're kind of a fool if you don't. That is like it's like the show off marquee PS5 exclusive. I mean, it doesn't have many exclusives if you count PC games, but still. Which let me just throw this in real quick. This whole argument about PS5 has no games. Have you heard this?
No.
No, it's this huge thing. Jake will say it to you all day. He'll be like, I bought this PS5. Why do I even have it? There's no games on it. And their argument for it is either A, the games come out on PS4. So like God of War Ragnarok came out on PS4. And Horizon Forbidden West came out on PS4 too.
Right.
Or B, it's been ported to PC, like in Miles Morales or Ratchet and Clank. So really, if you ask someone if they think this way, you know, what games does PS5 have? What exclusive? It has the Demon Souls remake, not Returnal anymore. Final Fantasy 16, and like 2 other games that are pure console exclusives. And for some reason, this is being weaponized as PS5 has no games. There's no reason to own a PS5 and something. I just find that so fucking ridiculous. Xbox actually has no exclusives. Every single one of their titles goes to PC and has since like 2014. And then B, again, you motherfuckers weren't there. You weren't there in the PS3 era. You weren't there during the Vita.
In the trenches.
In the trenches. When I had the PlayStation Vita and I was playing fucking Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified because there's nothing else releasing on it.
Oh my God.
You want to talk about no games? take a seat.
Back in my day,
Back in my
uphill
day.
both ways in the snow.
I'm just saying. The PS Vita's best game, Persona 4 Golden. That's a port of a PS2 game. Yeah, I had Golden Abyss 2 and things like that. But after like the second year, no. It had tons, and that's the thing too, is like it still had tons of games, and I defended it too. I have over 100 physical PS Vita games. It has games. It has games. But people always come up with this, oh, it has no games because it's not exclusive or something. It's such a fucking ridiculous argument. Yeah. So I just want to throw that in there. PS5 has plenty of games. Yeah. Oh, I threw it hard. Play Final Fantasy 16 though. All right, Ida.
Andrew?
I spoke a lot. But that's okay.
Yes, you did.
Well, I was just saying, I'm ending the show. So
I know it.
So I was saying, all right, Ida, thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any other questions, comments, discussions, thoughts, topics that you want to bring up?
I don't think so.
No? You got everything out that you wanted to say?
I think so.
Gonna continue playing Persona 4 Golden, and do you have the next game lined up?
The next game on like the roster after I finish Persona 4?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. The roster is so long at this point. I just need to triage. Like I'm about to start hitting the short games just so I can trim down some fat on them. No,
you got to do that. That way you feel like you're getting somewhere.
Right.
That way 2 months doesn't pass and you beat 2 games. You got to get those like 3, 5, 10-hour games in there too to be like, I beat 7 games this month.
Right.
4 of them were 3 hours long, but still I beat 7. Still counts.
Right.
Yeah,
when are you gonna beat Tears of the Kingdom so we can do a spoiler cast?
I'm thinking about it. We might just. No, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. But
yeah, I know.
If a month passes, I'll tell you this right now. It's probably not going to be this month. It'll probably be August at the earliest because of moving and all that.
Right, for sure.
But if August comes and it's like August 15th and I still haven't beaten it, we might just do it without me beating it. And I think I could still throw an effective
hat in the
review
ring.
In there, hat in the ring. Yeah, because I think that still counts. If I can't even beat it, I think there's something to be said about that. And I have plenty of comments and thoughts about it too. I think
you do.
Honestly, I think me not beating it already and me not having any desire to beat it is telling of the game, you know?
I think getting all the Korok seeds in the first 30 hours of the game really killed you on it.
Okay, no, 2 things.
I can go on about this
2 things.
All day.
Because I want to throw this in real quick. A, I did that at 50 hours in.
Oh.
And B, I did it for about 5 hours, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm at 65 hours. So I played 10 more hours after I stopped doing that. Mm-hmm. Those 5 hours were the most fun I had in the game in like 20 hours.
So how far?
I really liked just going from place to place and doing the little cute puzzles to find the Korok seeds. I really enjoyed that. It was when I got back to the main stuff that it just fucking sucked the soul out of me again.
Really?
Yeah, I beat 2 temples. That's how far I am.
You gotta keep going.
That's what people keep saying.
Because once you get past that point...
Not to spoil it, but Jake told me his reaction to the ending, and it is not what you think it is. It is not what you think it is. And it's also something that I've heard from quite a few other people too.
I might have a similar opinion because I am a Zelda stan till the day I die, but I would be more of a fake fan in my opinion if I thought everything that came out with the Zelda title was made of gold. So I did my review. I gave it an 8.1 total. And I have problems with it. It's not perfect. Yeah. And the ending wasn't...
Whoa.
Cinematically, it was gorgeous, and that's where we'll leave it until the spoiler cast.
We'll just leave it there, yeah. Because I mean, I will beat it. I beat every Zelda game. It's just right now.
One day.
It's the problem of, and I was telling Roger this during the Resident Evil 4 spoiler cast, where it's just like there's so many good games right now. Because like after Final Fantasy 16, I still haven't started Diablo 4. And I've heard that game is fucking amazing.
So have I.
And I still haven't played Jedi Survivor yet. And Armored Core 6 comes out. And Spider-Man 2 comes out.
You got to start racking those numbers up.
A million games come out. And I'm over here like, I'm forcing myself to play Tears of the Kingdom at this point. Because I really am just like, it's Breath of the Wild 2.0, which is fine. But also, I think you could say that is a hindrance. It's like, it's just Breath of the Wild again. You know?
In ways,
Like,
I agree with you.
yeah, I mean, there's enough differences to warrant a sequel out of it, but it's also, if you just gave someone a controller and had that game running and didn't tell them what it was, they would say this is Breath of the Wild, or maybe it's a modded version of Breath of the Wild. You know, like it's the
Right.
same game again extensively.
Right.
Which
It's a
if you,
continuation of the story.
yeah, which if you love that game and that, you know, world and things, it's great. I wasn't even hot on Breath of the Wild when it came out, so like
I
kind of
know
makes
you
sense that
weren't.
I'm not really hot on Tears of the Kingdom either.
You'll play it
Uh,
again in 5 years and love it.
maybe we'll see.
I know.
But I'll try to play. I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is that's my initiative right now, though, because that game. I mean, when we're done with this, I'm gonna go play that. And then also, I've been wanting to play Persona 3 again. Because watching you play Persona 4, I'm just like, oh, I want to.
You need to wait for me.
You know, sure, yeah, I can wait for.
But I honestly might wait until
the
it
remake
comes out. Yeah,
That's fair. That's fair. I'm sure
we'll
the
see.
remake will be the best way to play it extensively.
I'll definitely need to take a break between Personas 2 just to take just to take a little break to get like a fresh palette to go back into it.
Yeah, I think that's important. You don't want to burn yourself out on
Right.
too much Persona, even though those games are different enough.
Yeah. Playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom literally back to back a day apart, it hurt a little bit there in the middle because I was like, this is a lot of the same thing.
You know, I did that too, but and we're getting way too deep in this, but I'll leave it here. It's like I did that too, but my problem was I liked playing Breath of the Wild more. I had way more fun with the mechanics in Breath of the Wild than I have had at all with Tears of the Kingdom.
Then you know what you should do?
Just play Breath of the Wild. Yeah, that's what I should do.
I know you miss your bombs. I know you miss your stasis.
Stasis.
I know it.
I even miss cryosis. That second playthrough, Breath of the Wild, dude, that second playthrough, I was using cryosis in ways I had never used it before, and it was a game changer.
Yeah.
Like, it was making the game so much more creative and fun.
And I think that's the thing to be said, too. Yeah.
And Tears of the Kingdom, I get it. They're like, here, crafting. Now you can build anything, and super fun. It's like, I
never
think
built anything, to be honest.
It's such a... It's not worth it.
I've seen amazing things. Like today, I saw somebody make a freaking Beyblades arena, and it was incredible.
No, I think that's super
love
cool.
The creativity.
It's just not for me. I don't do that.
That's totally fine. A lot of people don't, and I completely relate to that.
Yeah. So,
but we'll save this for the spoiler cast.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Roger and Jake are dead to me. No, not actually. Roger did the spoiler cast. If you haven't checked that out yet, go over to our Patreon, patreon.com/slightlyemp to check out the links there, or you can go to YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatoneandrew or youtube.com/slightlyemp. They're posted on both of those. If you go to either one of those, please like and subscribe and comment. It helps with the algorithm and boosts our channel up and our videos up into other people's recommended and suggested. Also, check out our podcast services on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. You can find links for those either on our Facebook page, facebook.com/slightlyemp, or back on that Patreon that I've already mentioned. I'm stumbling over my words, just so much to say. Whenever you get to those, please, I've noticed this, and it's fantastic. We need a little more, though. Please rate them 5 stars. I can see it because I own the podcast that we have like 2 to 3 reviews on them, which is fantastic. They're all 5 stars. I think we need like 5 for it to actually pop up, and that's where it'll start hitting the algorithm more. So it goes for my co-host, but also everyone else. Go to iTunes, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, and please rate us over there. That way we get boosted and people can actually see our show, because one of our problems is that, I don't even want to call it a problem. I mean, I think we're fine where we are. We do this because we love doing it. But if we want to get bigger, we need people to see us. So that'll be one way for us to actually be seen. And like I said already, but facebook.com/slightlyemp if you want to keep up on all of our posts and things like that, like our awesome animated series. It's not a series, but our animated video that someone made. You can find the link for that there. Really cool. Actually, Susan went over to hang out with some friends the other day, and I was coming over too later, though I had to work. And she sent me a video where she was showing them the animated video, and I was like, oh goodness, it's really good though. Like,
it's so sweet.
When I watched it all the way through, one of the times I was like, this is just, it's just fantastic. She did such a great job.
I'm excited to watch it all the way through. I haven't for obvious reasons, but
yeah, that's fair. But go ahead and check that out. And then while you're on Patreon, again, patreon.com/slightlyemp, if you want to toss us a couple bucks, We appreciate it. I pay for all this out of pocket, you know, the editing software, the hosting software, half the microphones now. Your microphone, my microphone.
Now.
I think I might have. No. Roger bought his own. I was like, I might have given him that snowball. I can't remember. But, you know, all this is out of pocket. So, you know, if you want to toss us a couple bucks, it does help out. And we do greatly appreciate it. If not, though, it's cool. We appreciate you just listening. Either way, I think that's all. Did I miss anything?
I hope not.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I'll shut this out.
Oh.
I don't even know what the URL is. I made a Threads account. Slightly Entertained Media Productions, just slightly EMP on Threads, which is Instagram's Twitter. I hate Twitter. You know, hot take. I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk.
And yet you're still on Twitter fighting people.
I'm not, you know, I'm not fighting people. I'm putting journalists in their place.
Yeah, with journalism.
By doing their job.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, look how I did your job better than you. I know what the thing is. Even though he didn't respond, I know that he saw it.
Yeah.
And him seeing it enough, that's enough for me. Is knowing that I went out and I did research and I wrote a fucking essay where he couldn't do that. So anyways, go check that out. I actually posted that essay on Patreon too. So patreon.com/EMP. If you want to read through my essay, I think it's all right. I wrote it in like 3 hours and didn't edit it. I mean, I edited a little bit, but not much at all. So go check that out. But yeah, that'll be the end of the show. Thank you so much, Ida, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Next episode, we'll probably have more people. Oh, Jake's in Kansas. That's what I was going to say. Like, Roger did the last show with me. That's why he's not here. He did the spoiler cast. And then Jake is in Kansas right now. He's here for a friend's birthday. So that's why he's not on the show, but he should be back next episode.
Yep.
So, all right. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everyone else. I'm fucking done thinking and plugging. Goodbye.
Bye.